Well, hello, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well tonight on this fine Friday evening. Beautiful day, beautiful past couple days here in Southern Ontario. Things have been really nice, and that's always a good sign that, maybe we'll be getting our paddles in the water very soon or our feet on the trails. Just got to keep things going here, happy and healthy with all this COVID stuff, and we'll be all doing fine. Let's see here. Tonight we've got a great show. This is our 34th episode, and it's a special edition episode, obviously being here on a Friday night, not our regular Tuesday evenings. And the reason being is because we got a really cool topic for tonight. We're going to be talking a little bit about backcountry video and editing techniques for us YouTubers and how to improve this. And we've got three great guests on tap. And we're going to be sharing a lot of information, and I'll explain to you how it's going to go because we're going to break it into segments for you so that we can try to cover certain things without going too far away from each topic. Before I get too far, I just want to do one quick shout out. I was fortunate enough today. I went to the mailbox and I found a nice big box in there, and it was a package that was sent to me by one of my YouTube subscribers, and I just wanted to thank him and shout him out tonight on the show. Thank you very much. I'm not sure if he's in the chat right now or not, but I'm sure he'll play back. If not, he sent me a nice box or a nice jar full of chaga. I watched one of his videos, and he actually went out there and he's finding chaga left, right, and center. And I left him a comment saying, "Wow, you're lucky because I can't find any in my area here." And lo and behold, I went to the mailbox today, and there was a really nice canning jar full of chaga. So to Mark from Open Air Outdoors, thank you very much. If you see this video, I greatly appreciate it. I'm truly blessed that I have followers like you. You're awesome. And for those of you that might not be familiar with Open Air's Outdoors, his link is in the description below. After the chat, go check out his channel, show him some love. He's a smaller YouTuber, and I'm sure his channel could use some support. So that's that for that. Let's see here. I mentioned today's episode 34. I'm your host, Dennis, also known as Canoe Hound. And this show, for those of you that know the show, it's a show that brings you closer to the great outdoors and the hot topics that we like. And we host all kinds of great YouTubers, and we get to know a little bit more about them, right? So it's a lot of fun. Yeah, let's see here. I'm not going to go streaming on too much because we got a lot to cover tonight, and it's going to be a great night. As you know, this is an interactive live stream, okay? Your participation is more than welcomed on the show, and this is the way we're going to be doing it tonight. We're going to be breaking this up into 4 different segments, this show. We're going to have, first segment is we're going to cover camera gear, okay? We'll talk about some of the gear, whether it's cameras, lighting, accessories, things like that. Second segment is going to be about getting the shot, how to set up great video while you're in the backcountry. And then thirdly, we're also going to be touching on, of course, editing, talking about a couple different editing suites and things like that, all the things you should do, shouldn't do. And all this information is going to be coming from 3 great YouTubers that are in the business of shooting video and editing video. It's their livelihood. So they kind of know what's going on. And the fact that it spills over into their YouTube channels, it's clearly evident when you watch their videos that they know what they're doing, right? And they're kind enough to join us tonight and share. And with that being said, I'm just going to get rid of that there and that there. We're going to get right into introducing our esteemed guest tonight. Our first guest has been on the show here a few weeks back. She has a very popular YouTube channel that's she gets all kinds of great videos. Her videos are very polished. They got a great flow to them. Please welcome to the live stream tonight, and let's get her out of the green room here, Chris Prouse. Chris, how you doing tonight?
Good. How are you, Dennis?
Awesome. Thanks for joining us tonight and hoping to enlighten everybody with your knowledge.
Thank you. Thank you. And again, before we get started, to Dennis's audience, please recognize that Dennis puts a ton of work into these live streams. So if you haven't already subscribed to his channel, help support the channel by subscribing down there.
Thanks, Chris.
So, yeah, Dennis puts a lot of work into these, so it's well deserved.
A labor of love, a labor of love.
Yeah.
Our next individual that we're going to be bringing up here is he also has a YouTube channel called 2 Men and a Canoe. Welcome to the panel, Ben Stacey. Hey, Ben, how you doing?
Hey, I'm good. How are you doing?
Yeah.
Hey,
The
Chris,
running
how you
joke
doing?
tonight is going to be, can you hear me now?
Yeah,
hear me now?
exactly. Our test when I was on a cell phone did not go well at all. I couldn't hear anybody.
It's okay. We got through it. And then our fourth panelist tonight there is the producer of a Rogers television series, and he's also showing all the videos on his channel, his YouTube channel. The show that he produces is called Mark in the Park. Please welcome Matthew Haughn.
Hello.
And I'm saying that right,
Hey.
right? It's Haughn, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right. So for any of you in the live chat that have watched the show Mark in the Park, this guy is the video and editing master behind that. So thanks for joining us, everybody, for this show. This is going to be a good time, and everybody tighten your seatbelts because you're going to learn lots tonight. Lots. Before we get started, I just wanted to say, I was telling our panelists tonight that I put up a poll on the YouTube community tab asking what people thought about do you want to learn more about backcountry video and editing skills, or any video and editing skills for that matter. And I just wanted to share the results with you. I had 54 votes come in on that. 85% of you said yes, you want to learn more, you want to improve your video skills. 9% said I think my skills are good enough. And then 6% said, nah, they don't want to improve. So just thought I'd share. We thought that was kind of funny that 6% of the people don't want to improve. So craziness. Anyways, okay, so where are we going to start tonight? Let's start talking about some camera gear. Who wants to start? What is a good basis for any YouTuber to start as far as camera gear is concerned?
Wow. Well, I think we all probably have different ideas, but start with whatever you have. If you have a camera in your cell phone, just start with that.
Yeah, and camera gears come a lot, or like cell phones have come a long way.
Yeah,
I know some YouTubers that exclusively shoot with their camera or with their cell phones.
Oh yeah,
and you wouldn't know it.
They make a living off of YouTube just shooting with their phone too.
Yeah,
it's pretty good. And most phones come with like 3 or more cameras on them now too, with different lenses and everything. So they're starting to bridge the gap between professional and non-professional.
Yeah, I've always said that the best camera to shoot with is the one that you got. I mean, if the cell phone is what you've got, use it. It doesn't have to be a professional camera. Like, they're really good. I've actually used some cell phone shots in professional videos because it's been the most appropriate camera to use to get that shot. So
yeah.
So, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a big, expensive DSLR or dedicated video camera with like 3 CCD chips. I still remember that.
We still use those.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
I know for years I got by. You know what? Setting all this stuff up, I didn't even bring my own camera gear here to do show and tell, just like you guys will probably end up doing. So I'm gonna have to duck out a screen in a minute. But I started out with like simple Canon point and shoots, and they just so happened to be the same model. I had one for my business and one that we had here, and they never got used. Exactly, something similar to that. And I shot my first year and a half of videos with that before I invested in a DSLR. What if somebody is going to make the investment of going into a DSLR? What should they be looking for when it comes to selecting a camera for an improvement, right? Yeah, upgrade. That's the word.
Yeah.
Who wants to go first?
Maybe I should be pointing at somebody this way, right? How about you? What would you suggest?
And it's so funny because like this is probably the most common question I get sometimes on the channel is like, what camera should I buy? And people don't understand that like that's such a nuanced question that really depends on what you intend to do with it. And I'd really steer people to towards considering what they already enjoy and appreciate, and then maybe pick that filmmaker's brain and ask what they're using or what they have used in the past as a stepping stone to wherever they are right now, and maybe head in that direction. But you can also do research on your own. There is a tremendous amount of research out there right now. My gosh, yeah. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know about you, Ben and Matt, but I'm completely self-taught. So, yeah, the world of cameras is rich and deep, and my goodness, like cameras alone could be an entire live stream of their own.
And it changes like yearly too. Like they're coming out with so like huge improvements every year too. And so
Yeah.
you get a camera this year, and 2 years from now it'll be completely out of date. It's like your phone.
Yeah, but I don't think you should get caught up in what's got the latest, greatest thing, because it's all how you shoot the shots. Like I said, it can be your cell phone, it can be your DSLR, it can be a dedicated video camera, whatever you're comfortable using. Don't get something that you are going to have trouble using, or you're going to be scared to bring out in, conditions when you're outside, because then you're not going to shoot. The whole point of taking a camera is to shoot. So take something that you're going to use.
Yeah.
I guess it would be fair to say too that any equipment that you buy, you have to, like you say, you have to become comfortable with it, but you should really learn your gear to see what your gear can do for you.
Oh yeah.
Right? Whether, like I say, whether it's a little point and shoot, it's amazing that some of the things that these things can actually do that you might not be aware of, right? Versus a DSLR or something where you've got all these manual settings or automatic settings. But something like this, like I say, you can get by with that if you really learn how to use your equipment.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know about you guys, but like whenever I pick up a new camera, the first thing I do is I download the manual on my phone.
Yeah.
That way, like if anything happens, I have the manual. But Dennis, you're right. Like you just like go outside, shoot some video around your house. Just get to know the camera, because when you're out in the bush and the moose walks out, well, you don't have time to fiddle the settings and what does this do, what does that do. You want to pick it up, shoot it, you got it, kind of thing. So
even if you know the camera, on Wednesday I went paddling and I put a little video on my site, but I have a DJI Pocket, Osmo Pocket. So this is a little gimbal, right? It's tiny. You can carry it. You can mount it. I had it mounted on my canoe. But you see that screen? Look how small that is. So somehow it got switched to photo setting. And it's in bright sunlight. It's mounted away from me. I can't see it. So every time I hit and record, thinking I'm recording video, I'm just taking a still picture. So when I got home, I have all this footage. I thought I had all this footage of me paddling. And I go, oh, I got these still photos. So
you got a bunch of thumbnails.
Exactly. So even when you know the camera,
like that happened though, right? Something like that's happened to every one of us.
Oh yeah.
It's like, oh darn, you get home and instead of hitting the record, you're shutting it off because you forgot to shut it off after the last shot.
Yeah.
Dennis, you brought up a really good point. Like starting out with something like a point and shoot, it's a fantastic way to go, because you will learn so much more about filmmaking with limitations than you will by just simply throwing money at problems. Mm-hmm. So it's really tempting to go out and splurge a ton of money on a really expensive camera, when in reality, if you start simple and start with a lower end camera, trying to figure out how to get a great image out of that really inexpensive camera is going to teach you much more about filmmaking than the higher end camera sometimes. So I personally went from filming with professional cameras for many, many years to when we started the vlog, starting off with a point and shoot because that's what the travel vloggers of the day were using. And I wanted to understand the medium a little bit more and what it was like to film with a camera like this. This camera actually taught me a lot, and learning how to squeeze, an image that looks a little bit more like, say, a $600 camera's base image out of a $200 camera is a great way to learn. Just squeeze everything out of your current inexpensive camera gear. And then once you've squeezed everything out of it, then step up to the next camera.
Yeah, you don't always have to make that huge investment and start right out. I remember seeing a YouTube video probably about a month and a half ago, and I think it might have been Cold Cracker Outdoors. And he said he made his first $100,000 on YouTube, and he showed the camera, and it was nothing more than a point and shoot.
Yeah.
Which is like I say, it's you have to learn the gear and you have to learn how to use it pretty much, right?
That's it. You got to learn how to get the shots that you're going to need. That's what it comes down to. I mean, I think Chris, you and I were talking about this when you're talking with me, but I mentioned there's like the big professional film cameras. The Arri LF is like probably a $400,000 camera. So you might think, oh, that's the best camera to use. It doesn't record audio.
Yeah.
There is no way to record audio on that thing. So for an average person, you'd be going, this is terrible. Why would you want this? So starting with something that's basic and you can do everything with, that's the way to start.
And it doesn't matter like what camera you have. If you have a great story, people won't care about what quality is, or if it's out of focus or the white balance is off. If you smack down that story, people will be just deep into that image the whole time.
Yeah.
So now, like I had mentioned at the beginning of the show, that each one of you, your livelihood is made through videography. Getting the shots, whether it's corporate or I don't know, maybe wedding videos or whatever, but you all have this as it's your livelihood. So you guys know how to produce this. And the fact that it does spill over into your YouTube videos is clearly evident, right? Whereas if you watch some YouTubers and you can tell the difference of somebody that is experienced and then somebody that is not experienced, right? So I can understand what you're saying, Matt, about having, if you got a good story, you're still going to captivate people, but it sure does make it a lot more appealing to watch or easy to watch, easy on the eyes. If you got nice transitions, you got the nice cuts, and you got good lighting and good sound, and not like the of the wind noise and stuff like that. So
I understand. I think that we understood story, and then we just upped the production value just because that's what we do every day. Like, it's second nature to all of us. So, but I mean, like, we all started where everyone else started. We started with our first video, our first camera, and it just grew from there, and just practice, and then you'll get there eventually. It's got to be patient, kind of thing.
Yeah, story is everything. If you don't have a good story to tell or an interesting story, no matter how simple it is, nobody's going to care how good your shots are. Otherwise, it's like you see these big blockbuster action movies, and some of them have a good story, and you get into it. Others, it's garbage story, and all you're really watching is an effects reel. Yeah, and that's not that interesting.
That's true.
Yep.
So let's talk about different or specific cameras. Let's start with, say, point and shoots. Who still carries one into the backcountry with them?
Well, technically, a GoPro is a point and shoot.
It is, yes.
Okay. Well, we'll put them. We're going to put them under action cameras, though.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, we'll call a GoPro an action cam.
What about you? The closest to point and shoot that I would use now is my cell phone.
Yeah.
That's my.
I'll still bring mine. I have two of them, and the reason being maybe getting multi shots type of thing. But the main reason is I don't know. If you get into crappy weather, I got a new DSLR that I'm kind of like very protective over right now. And I don't want to get wet, the mouse getting all soppy and stuff, right? So I want to keep I'll throw this on the gunnel of my canoe in a heartbeat. And if it gets rained on, it gets rained on. If it goes, we're done. That's fine. I got another one, right? But that's why I would still carry that into the backcountry.
Yeah, and I would always tell people that their camera gear is more resilient than they think it is. So, for instance, like this point and shoot, it got dragged through the rain, filmed in the rain quite a bit with it. It's all scraped to heck on the front ring because I fell with it in my pocket when I was rollerblading. And it's just been beat up and it's been dropped so many times, but it still takes a great image. And so when you're out there, if you come with a camera like this, look out for it, but don't baby it. And you'd be surprised at how well this gear handles in inclement weather. It's it's tougher than you think.
Cool.
Yeah, I agree. But
just really quick to all the people in the chat tonight, if you do have a question for one of the guests on the show, if you have a particular person you want to ask a question of, put their first name's capital letter in first. So if you want Chris, put a capital letter C, and then start your question. M for Matt, B for Ben, and we'll get the questions up on screen as much as we can. So that way there we can direct questions to whomever, right? Okay, so what about we'll talk about the action cams now. Like I've got a cheapie. This one here is like one of those $49 Amazon deals that to me works great.
Yeah, and the funny thing about action cameras is I had a really difficult time recommending them to people a few years ago just because they had so little in the way of image stabilization in them. And so then you'd see people go make GoPro videos and the edits would just be super shaky and all over the place. And the low light was terrible on flat or low light days. But the most recent GoPros, like specifically the 8 and the 7, have come a long way. And I'm actually very impressed by the stabilization in the 8, to the point at which I'm now starting to recommend this to people as kind of like their go-to do everything kind of backcountry camera, because it is a little bit more durable. And so then people aren't going to worry about it as much, and then they're probably going to keep it out rather than tuck it away. And they'll just happen to get more shots with this. So I am recommending action cameras to more people nowadays.
I do find the audio's got way better on them, but it's still not the best.
I was going to ask that because I remember my GoPro Hero 3.
Yeah. Oh, that would be awful. These are much better. Like if you're close to it, it's going to pick you up. Your cell phone's going to get way better audio than this. But for what they're for, not worrying about them getting wet or, mounting them on your canoe, wherever you're going to do. I'll take this. And sometimes I have a couple other, the sessions, the number 5s, they're like little cubes. And sometimes I'll mount them as well. So they are handy. You can just experiment with these things, get really cool stuff.
Yeah, you can put them anywhere. And they have a super, super wide angle lens on them. So you can get your very wide beauty shots too with them if you want.
Now, do you find that being a problem that because they have such a wide angle lens on it that your subject matter always seems to be so far away when they're not really that far away?
it's like the GoPro effect. You can change settings in it and you can narrow the field. But it's kind of, it has its disadvantages, I guess. So
what I really like about the 8, and I think the 7 does it as well, is you can shoot in what they call linear mode, Dennis. And so it effectively takes out the fisheye look in camera and gives you a more traditional look, which is really handy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's see here. We got a couple questions coming in here. Let's see what we could fashion here. What's the make and model of the action camera recommended by Chris? Well, we've just touched on that.
The Hero 8.
Yeah. Ari Rosen's asking the panel, what are your thoughts on gimbals for backcountry filming? We'll probably touch on
Chris
gimbals
loves
a little
gimbals.
bit here in a minute, right? That's a gimbal?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got gimbal envy at the moment.
I would say about 60 to 70% of our shots are filmed on a gimbal. And that's just because I'm a little obsessed about creating super smooth video. But I'm filming with the Pilot Fly Adventure gimbal. And before that, I was using the Pilot Fly H2. And really just because they actually, DJI, everybody thinks that DJI came out with the 45-degree bent back arm so that you could also see your screen when the camera was mounted. But Pilot Fly actually came out with it, I think like 6 or 7 months before DJI did. But yeah, nowadays, gimbal comparisons, like a few years ago, like there was a clear-cut path, like you want this one because these ones are terrible. But nowadays, the gimbals are all very close. They're all very competitive. You get similar results out of any of them. So if you happen to spend, I'd say about, it is a little pricey. If you spend anywhere from $400 to $800, you're probably going to get very, very similar results.
They also, you can also get ones for your cell phone too. And they're relatively inexpensive, like $125, $150 or something like that. And I sometimes use that as well. Depends what I feel like taking.
Now, when it comes to a gimbal, though, are they not specific to certain time? Like if you're getting one that'll fit a DSLR, is it not specific to specific DSLRs for the control mechanism?
It's it won't. A lot of them won't have controls for it. I mean, the DJI will control certain cameras. I don't know about the one you have, Chris. Most of them, you're still going to have to press record on the camera, and you're just controlling pan and tilt and stuff like that.
So this one has a record button on the front of it, and it's actually you can sync this one with Sony cameras, I believe, via Bluetooth. So you can, and I'm pretty sure the DJI products work with Panasonic cameras now as well.
They do, yeah. They do, yeah. You can use the Sony, but it uses RF. Like you got to put this little RF thing in front of the sensor on them, and it's not as reliable apparently.
But to answer your question more, Dennis, gimbals typically nowadays have weight ratings on them. So you just look at your camera's weight and then select your gimbal by weight or what they would refer to as payload. So how much weight the gimbal can take. And it all depends on the size of the motors and how much it can compensate for.
Yeah, so I've been looking into buying one for the specific reason of basically this question here. How would you recommend filming shoreline, which is essential in continuous tracking shot, trying to keep your image stable, like with your rolling canoe, right? And that a gimbal will definitely take that away, would it not?
Yeah, and so I do film with the gimbal quite a bit in the canoe. And to get super stable images in the canoe, I combine it with a camera that has dual IS, like this Panasonic G9. And so when you combine in-camera image stabilization with a gimbal, it creates a really super smooth, stable image. And this combo lets me film really long telephoto focal lengths and still keep the horizon level. So gimbals really helpful in the canoe. Not helpful at steering when Julia's trying to paddle.
All right.
Is Julia watching?
Because well, Julia's upstairs putting something in bed right now. But often, what I'll be doing is I'll be in the back of the boat with the gimbal, and the other hand has got the paddle, and I'm just sort of trying to steer as best as I can. But it is definitely a little awkward. If you could see the behind the scenes of me filming with it, you'd probably think I look silly.
So is it something that the three of you would recommend using a gimbal for backcountry filming?
It depends what kind of shots you want. I mean, yes, if you want to get those really nice smooth shots. If you don't want to carry it, no. I take it sometimes. Sometimes I don't. For me, it comes down to the story. I mean, like you're saying, Matt, people will forgive a little bit of shakiness if your story is interesting. It's a bonus to have that. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'd love to have silky smooth shots all the time, but I'm not going to carry the gimbal every single time I go backcountry camping.
Yeah, like the camera that I bring, just because it has to be broadcast specs, it's too big to bring a gimbal. Like the gimbal that you need for it would be giant, and then that would just be more batteries that I have to charge. So that's why I don't bring it along with me. But if I did go like for YouTube, yeah, I'd bring one along, because especially on portages, it's when you're walking, it can be like kind of thing. So
you're the guy that doesn't get to drink coffee on the canoe trip, then, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's me.
That's awesome.
It's not a gimbal, but I showed you some of the footage that I shot with my 360 camera, the Insta360 One X. And the cool thing with that, it has amazing stabilization because it's shooting 360. So it has 360 degrees to choose from to stabilize it. So I'm amazed at that. You can be walking around with that and it's smooth. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah. So Martin's asking, Chris, using the GoPro, would you still use a gimbal on that or with that, given a good stabilization of it?
Yeah, on the Hero 8, I'm not using gimbals anymore, and it's funny because I have 3 gimbals for GoPros, and years ago, I don't know if people have seen our epic ski hill running video where Julie runs up and down a ski hill, but that was all filmed with a GoPro gimbal on the Hero 4. I would use a gimbal on any GoPro up until about the Hero 6, and then the 7 and the 8 have pretty good image stabilization. And now I don't use the GoPro gimbals anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I am so impressed by this camera. We were just in Frontenac Park last weekend, and I was filming with this, and I was looking at the shots afterwards, and you would almost think it was filmed on a gimbal. So, yeah, no gimbal required anymore.
They made big improvements for sure. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool. So back to the camera stuff then. Let's talk a little bit about DSLRs. Do you have to break the bank on buying a DSLR if that's what's going to be your weapon of choice out there?
Not necessarily. You can get you can get like a, I don't know what's the Canon's up to, the T whatever 6 or 7. They're not that expensive.
Yeah.
This is not a DSLR. This is a mirrorless, so it's smaller. I have taken my DSLR, but this does as good a job, if not better, and it's smaller. So I like taking this if I'm going to take something.
Yeah, if you're bringing if you're considering a DSLR, I would consider mirrorless, just because of battery savings and space and weight. Everything's smaller in a mirrorless.
Yeah, actually, for video, in some ways, these are better, especially if you have a viewfinder on it, because a DSLR you cannot look through the viewfinder and shoot video because you're only using the screen on the back. This, because it's an electronic viewfinder, I can actually, and I'm more stable if I'm holding it like this. I can be filming like this and still see what I'm doing. So I'd go mirrorless. If mirrorless are the most common ones now anyway. So
Yeah.
Yep. So which that's a Canon what? What's the model?
This one is a Canon M6.
Canon M6?
Yeah.
Yeah, and when you're looking at DSLRs, I would also look for what are the lens choices that you were looking for too, because if you get more into the pro side of like the mounts, the lenses can be very expensive. But if you get something where the sensor is a crop sensor, you can get relatively cheap lenses. It's the same quality, same image, but it's smaller package and everything.
Plus, you've got to carry any lenses you take with you. So this is just a wide to mid-range zoom on this, but it comes off great. I can change lenses, but any other lenses I want, I have to also carry. So that's maybe a disadvantage with these, which is why I use this a lot.
Yeah, it's like an all-in-one.
Yeah.
So,
oh, cool. There you go. Yeah.
There you go. So those are pretty much dedicated video style cameras.
It's Handycam. Yeah.
Now, if someone did want to experiment with interchangeable lenses, like I would still recommend cameras like T3Is, T4Is.
They're so good. Yeah.
Just because you can pick them off eBay for next to nothing.
Yeah.
There are tons of lenses out there for them. It's a bigger sensor, so you get to experiment with a little bit more depth of field in your image. And it's taking an older camera out there, you're probably going to be less worried about, dinging it up and scratching it and all those things. And it could be a fantastic way to experiment with bigger sensors for next to nothing. And then, once you build some confidence with a camera like that and start to get a sense of how focal lengths work and aperture works and shutter speed and all that sort of stuff, then you might step up to a more expensive mirrorless camera. Just because mirrorless is where the market's heading. Everybody's now trending towards creating mirrorless cameras, but used DSLRs are still a great way to learn the basics.
Okay, so and what's your camera of choice then, Chris? Besides the GoPro?
So the only DSLR that I have left, I used to have a 5D Mark III, which is a full frame camera, and I built my business on that about 10 years. Well, not 10 years ago, but I originally built my business on a T2i, which is a Canon Rebel camera. And then a few years later, when the 5D Mark III came out, I stepped up to that. But any of the Rebel cameras, they have APS-C size sensors in them that are a little bit bigger. and a really nice way to experiment with interchangeable lenses. So I would still recommend Rebel cameras to people. Yeah.
Yep.
The only caveat is I don't think the older Rebels don't have phase detect autofocus in them, which is what you really sort of want nowadays. Which you're going to find in cameras, mid-size DSLRs like Canon's 80D, 80D, or some of their newer full-frame cameras. But you can still learn the basics, and pull focus manually, and made a lot of great videos on those DSLRs.
Cool. And now, Matt, you maybe, I don't know if your tricks are a little different because you're shooting for broadcast purposes.
Yeah.
Are the cameras you're using a little different than what we're talking about?
They're a lot bigger and a lot heavier.
Yeah.
You gotta lug them around. But
Like,
what are
over
you
your right
shooting on,
shoulder there, I see a big monster sitting back
yeah. I use an FS5.
Okay.
It's the smallest I could get because I have to use Rogers equipment. So it's the smallest I could get from them that was broadcast quality. It's the exact same as a mirrorless camera in the sense that it has interchangeable lenses and everything. It's just a little bit bigger and it's got more buttons and it's just a more pro-like camera. That's all. There's not much difference in terms of like the insides of it. It's a more customizable, I guess.
Okay. So which one of the three of you wants to take on the task of explaining to everybody exactly what is a mirrorless versus a DSLR?
Oh, so I can take that on. So
Yeah.
Well, you got the was that mirrorless? Okay, go ahead. Yeah, I was gonna say you could show the innards of your DSLR and then that one.
So this camera, you see the sensor directly. This is a Panasonic Micro Four Thirds camera, and mirrorless just really means it doesn't have the prism box in the top of the camera that you would typically look through, and there'd be a mirror that would reflect. Your image would be coming in through the lens, and then it would bounce and reflect off the mirror, and then up through a prism box and into your eye. And what would happen is every time you'd hit record, the mirror that was in front of the sensor would flip up or flip down and then expose the sensor. But now what's happening is manufacturers are scrapping the mirror box entirely and just having the bare sensor in there. And then what you see on the back is just a readout or there's an EVF, a digital EVF, showing you effectively what the sensor is seeing.
Okay, so and that reduces the weight of the camera somewhat.
Yes,
it does.
Yes, it does, and the size too.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. Let's see here. What do we got here? We got a couple of questions about Mac versus PC, but not kind of. And we won't get into that until we actually get into the editing stuff. So Tom will get back on that one there. Where are we there? Okay, so we talked about the action cameras and the point and shoots and the DSLRs and mirrorless and the dedicated. So you think we covered on the camera stuff enough? Does anybody have any final questions for the panel on cameras? If you do, put it in now, because the next section that we're probably going to move on to, unless does anybody on the panel have anything else they'd like to add?
I think the only other thing is lenses. Yeah, and like you've got your wide angles, you've got your standard 35 millimeter, which is typically what the eye sees a little bit. And then you've got your telephotos. And so to cover that range, you might have a zoom lens that can go from wide to a longer focal length. Or you might have prime lenses that's just a single focal length, usually a bigger aperture in your primes. But typically in the backcountry, I really only actually carry two lenses. I'll carry a zoom that gets me some wide and some telephoto. And then I carry a really fast prime lens for filming at nighttime to let in more light. And then I also use them for time lapses as well when I'm trying to catch the stars at night. So just two lenses.
I did see somebody asking about some of the other things that go along with your camera, like a tripod. I don't know if you guys take a tripod. I often take just a small tripod that I use to lock off shots. It's not got a fluid head, so I'm not doing pans or anything, but it's worth it, especially if you want to get shots of yourself instead of just trying to, you know, put your camera on a rock or something. A tripod is really handy, but you're going to probably want something that's lightweight. And like, yeah, I've taken one of those as well, and that's a little bit too much to carry. for get outside, we had to shoot with big stuff, and yeah, it makes a big difference. But you have a crew, so they can carry it.
I was just gonna say, no wonder Mark Rubino was falling over at the end of that portage the last time. Wasn't because of his gears, because of yours.
Yeah. I actually got to weigh it all today because I was curious, and I have it all with me. And it came out to 80 pounds.
Wow.
It's, I need to look at different solutions, obviously.
You're right, Ben. Maybe we shouldn't be leaving the camera thing yet, because part of the camera thing that we had on the itinerary was actually speaking about the gear that goes along with it.
Yeah,
right?
I'm seeing a bunch of other things too. People like asking about ND filters and stuff like that, which are handy. That basically cuts out some of the light. So if it's a really bright day and you want to,
it's kind of like sunglasses for your camera.
Kind of, yeah. Some cameras have it built in. Other cameras, you screw them on the end of the lens. It really depends, but they're useful if it's really bright out. Oh yeah, yours will have buttons with it. How many different ND filters are in that? Is it how many? Okay, you got multiple ones in that one.
No. It's one, but it's polarized, so I can gently.
Oh, nice. Okay,
between
cool.
Different settings.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it is. It's like sunglasses. So, and now the reason you would want that, Chris, you were talking about, you know, prime lens, is a fast lens so you can get more light in. But when you get more light in, you end up. Oh, there's the filter. Yeah. You get shallower depth of field. So I'll sometimes when I shoot with my DSLR for some of like in my videos, the YouTube videos, you'll see a lot of interview style telling the story, and I use that to cut with stuff. If I feel like it, I'm bringing my DSLR or mirrorless and I have a 50mm f1.4 lens, and it gives me nice, super shallow. So I'm in focus, background's nicely out of focus. But on a bright sunny day, that's too much light. So that's where an ND filter would reduce the amount of light, allowing you to still keep the lens that wide open so that you can get those shots. Yeah, they're good to have.
Yeah. So as far as lenses are concerned, what is a good average focal length lens? Like 18 to 55? What's a good one to use that will really work in the backcountry, or should you have a couple of different lenses?
I think that most manufacturers make an 18 to 200 for crop sensors, and that's a huge range if you can get it. The only downside to that is the more you zoom in, the less light that you get coming in. But that's just a trade-off. So
that's one of the reasons why I've been taking this for a lot of my trips recently. I used to take, you know, the mirrorless a lot and interchangeable lenses, but guarantee when I see that moose across the way, I've got this wide lens on and my other lens is packed in the bag, and I'm not going to be able to get the shot. So that's why if you do have like an actual video camera that has a built-in zoom, like this covers everything I need for the most part. I do like having these for the more creative shots, but this is another way around it.
Or a wolf, right? Or a wolf.
Yeah. Oh, I saw a wolf on Wednesday. Couldn't catch it on camera.
Always the case.
That wasn't a case of having the wrong lens. That was like the case of, oh crap, grab the camera. Oh, it's gone.
Yeah.
Okay. How about microphone systems? You know, I mentioned earlier on about you know, the wind, the noise sound, the wind noise.
You need a dead cat.
You need a dead cat or a dead mouse. A couple different names.
Yeah, you can get a dead mouse.
Yeah, and it's so funny because so I for a vlog I went from filming with these little tiny micro muffs on the in-camera mics to using some of the microphones that they've been putting out. But what I found was I was often behind the camera talking and interacting with Julia. And because I was using and experimenting with a lot of the microphones that they just held up. And because it's directional and the shotgun mic is trying to pick up what's in front of it, I often sounded muffled behind it. So The shotgun mics that you see on top of people's cameras, if you're getting into filmmaking specifically and you're trying to capture just subjects in front of you, they are a great way to go. If you're sort of vlogging and you're capturing content in front of you and you also want to talk and be heard behind the camera, then the little tiny micro muffs on the cameras in camera mics is a good way to go as well. And the reason why they're so important is because they cut down the wind noise, and a lot of these cameras have what's called automatic gain control. So they modulate how hot they are depending on what ambient noise is in the environment. So when you cut out the wind noise, you just you pick up more sounds, and the mic doesn't attenuate lower to try to compensate for really noisy wind.
Mm-hmm.
I also have been using one of these. This is a Tascam mic pack.
Nice.
Which you plug in. That comes with a wire, which is a lavalier mic. So if I know I'm going to be shooting stuff where I'm interested in the audio of what people are saying, I will use these. So I have a couple of these. So let's say it's my buddy Tim and I out on a 2-man in a canoe adventure. If I know we're going to be doing, let's say we're in the canoe and I want to catch us talking back and forth, I'll put one of these on each of us and just hit record. I mean, these things will record forever. You know, about 8 hours on like a 16 gig card or something like that. And you just keep the mic under your shirt, so that's acting as a wind shield as well. You got to be careful. You occasionally, depending on where it is, might pick up rustling of your shirt or whatever. But they're really handy.
You also have to make sure your talent doesn't walk away in the washroom
with your mic. Yeah. Now, I mean, there are wireless versions of these, but these actually record in these packs, which is cool. Oh, okay. That's your wireless to your camera.
Yeah. So for Mark in the park, he's always in my ear. Like I always have him coming through. And
advantage with yours, Matt, when you're using a wireless, is you are able to monitor the audio. This, I'm putting it on the person and leaving it, and it's recording.
No idea.
However, a good thing with this is you can record at 2 different levels. So you set your level, and it will record at a lower level as a backup in case suddenly somebody starts yelling. It doesn't blow out the sound. So I use those as well.
But the downside to this is I have a limited range. Like once Mark walks down the portage, I can't hear him anymore. Whereas the recorder, you can, if he sees something or if he starts like, I don't know, going off about how horrible the portage is, you have that audio.
Also with the recorder, you got to sync your audio later. So that gets into the editing. So that's a little tricky. You need to slate it, give yourself like a clap so you can slate it. So it gets a little more complicated, but there's lots of options.
One of the magical things of these accessory microphones is we talk about the dead mouse or the dead cat. They're called dead cats, right? Not dead mouse.
Cat. Yeah.
Usually dead cat, yeah.
Depends on the size of it, I guess. Okay.
I guess, yeah.
Dead kitten.
So, like I say, a lot of my early videos always had that wind noise in there, and it always drove me nuts. So these things are, you can on Amazon, you can find these things. They're surprisingly affordable. Like, you know, you can get them as low as like, you know, $30, $40 up to whatever, right? I think I paid like $45 for this, and it's phenomenal on this camera, right? I'm just saying. But the difference it makes in your audio recording. So for anybody out there that wants to clean up their audio sound, something like that is a great idea. Or even the little ones that you put on like your little point and shoots. I always thought of getting one. I couldn't find one. I thought I was looking too much into it, but one I could just stick on there with a hole in the middle and a little fuzzy thing on top, right? But I was going to steal my cat's troll doll.
It does. Now, if they don't cut out all wind sound, it gets rid of some. Like if it's really windy, find a less windy spot to shoot your audio.
Right. Well, if you're in the middle of a lake, though, you can't really do that.
But then don't be talking to the camera because you want your you can get away with not necessarily having some of the natural sound.
You can make that part of the story too. You can be screaming at the camera like,
that's
it's
true.
Really windy.
Right.
Kind of thing. So
story is more important.
The cordless mic systems then.
Yes.
Are they battery eaters? Like you have to carry 30 pounds of batteries with those things?
I have I have the same system that Matt has, and yeah, they go through batteries like crazy. Yeah.
So I have rechargeable batteries. They're just AA batteries. With Mark's mic, I can go 12 hours on a set, one set. So they're very expensive, but I only have to change them once a day, kind of thing. Yeah, so that's why I didn't bring like these batteries are just throwaway batteries, and they only last like 6 hours.
But Matt brought up a really good point about for those wireless mics where Matt's wearing the earphone. The important reason why you had to wear one all the time is because sometimes you get dead zones if the antennas are pointed at each other. The radiation pattern that comes off the antennas is actually, I think, toroidal. I think that's what they call it. It's a donut shape. So there are dead zones at the tops of the mics. And if they point towards each other, sometimes they cancel out or they don't receive. Oh, you've got, yeah, nice. But if you do go with a wireless solution like that, you always have to listen for when the mic cuts out. And sometimes your talent might say like something fantastic, but you could hear in your earphone that like the mic suddenly dropped out and there's like this horrible crackling sound.
I think the guys were going to kill me at one point because I kept on saying, "Can you say it again?" I didn't get that. And it also ruins the moment because anyone who says it the first time is awesome, and then the second time they think too much, and then they say it a different way, and you're like, "Yeah, that's not as good."
Yeah.
So, yeah, those are good points, Chris.
So now we mentioned power and batteries a few times. What do we do for power sources out there, Chris?
So I roll with about pretty close to 45,000 milliamps of batteries going into the park, and that's not enough to keep the gimbal, the camera, the mics, the GoPros, everything powered through the entire trip for a 7-day trip. So I really sort of had to top it up with solar along the way. But the solar, I like to refer to it as like the solar parachute because often you can put the solar panel out, like a big 28-watt panel for hours, and it will sometimes only make a small dent in those larger batteries. So you just kind of put it out whenever you can to charge, capture a little bit on the go, and just hope that it slows down your depletion of power throughout the trip. That's sort of how I approach it.
Okay.
Yeah. Matt, how many watts is your panel?
I have two. I bring two 100 watts.
Wow, that's a lot of wattage.
Yeah.
So Ben, you had gimbal envy. I got solar panel envy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Hey, I don't even use the solar panels. I just bring the battery, the packs to charge and hope it's enough. Oh, here's a tip. Whether you bring solar or whether you bring the battery packs to charge things, don't forget the cable. I've done that. Left my cable in the car. Day 3, I'm ready to recharge stuff. Where's my cable? Oh, I left it in the car.
It really depends on how much you're filming as well. So I would recommend before people go out on their trip and decide if they need to take solar or how much power they're going to take out with them, go out and film like a day at your local park and get some semblance of how much power you're going to be drawing throughout a day. Like for example, when we're filming in Algonquin Park, I'll sometimes go through about 5 camera batteries in just one day, and then it just becomes a super big challenge to charge them every night and keep them going. And then knowing that, sometimes you just have to scale back how much you're filming. And for some people, they might only film like 5-10 minutes per day, and maybe just taking a few extra batteries with you is the way to go.
Yeah, there's one thing I'll say about solar chargers is if you have a solar charger and your buddies bring phones or whatever their electronics are, you can guarantee you're going to run out of power before the end of the week is.
Yeah. Oh, can I charge my phone?
Encourage your friends to go get their own solar panels if they need them. And another thing that I would say is a little bit of advice too is if you have camera batteries that only have a short life expectancy to them because they're older batteries, get rid of them and invest in some new batteries, because you'd be surprised that you could jump from 15 minutes of record time to an hour and 10 minutes, whatever. And that makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Cold weather too. Cold weather kills
Keep your batteries warm.
Yeah.
So I don't know if do you guys do winter camping as well and film? Because
Not yet.
I film a lot in the winter, and oh my god, it makes a huge difference. You're constantly losing power.
Yeah, and something that I've learned from making like ski and snowboard edits like years ago is that like sometimes GoPros will just cut out at like -30, -40. Like the battery will last like 30 seconds. And a good way to keep them going is to strap a disposable hand warmer to the battery grip or the outside of the GoPro and extend its lifespan that way. So if it's really cold out, I would recommend that people try to keep their batteries warm. A good way to do that is to take all your batteries out of your kit and put them somewhere inside of your clothing next to you. Yep.
Oh, when we were shooting the winter camping episode of Get Outside, we were shooting that on some private land, so we were able to bring a drone and get some drone shots. We got one drone shot, which is in the show. Every other time we tried, we warmed up the batteries and everything. The drone would take off, get up to about 6 feet, and go, no, it's too cold, and come back down. Because it knew that the battery could die while it was in the air. So it's going, nope, I'm not flying. So, yeah, cold weather. I mean, it was -28, so that could be why. But
yeah, that would do it.
Cool. Well, I think that pretty much covered most of it. I know we can keep going on about it. We're almost an hour into the show now. We got a couple more segments to hit up. So I'm going to use Martin Pine's question here as a little bit of a segue into our shooting video. And this is for the whole panel. I'm curious how the panelists feel when they watch videos by non-professionals. How cringy is it? Do they find them unwatchable?
No, they're good. Well, okay. Can I just want to say they're good if it's interesting subject. Again, it comes down to the story, whatever story you're telling or whatever thing you're demonstrating. I mean, it's great if it has amazing, visuals, but if it's interesting, that's totally fine. That's the most important thing.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, next segment of the show here, we're going to be talking a little bit about getting the shot. Who wants to start with some sort of great tip for how to shoot in the backcountry?
I can go if you want.
Yeah, you seem to do a little bit of it there.
So because I have to shoot a lot in a day, it's kind of mentally taxing because I have to think of a lot of shots every single day and try to turn it up. So what I do is even before the trip starts, like I'm talking months before, I visualize what I want to see. So when I get out there, I can kind of recreate the shot. Now the circumstances aren't going to be the same, but I can make my shots something. It's almost like second nature kind of thing. So maybe like I've been visualizing how to shoot a moose for years, even though I've never seen one, unfortunately. But yeah, so I think that if you kind of know what you want to get before you even get out there, it saves battery time. You flip the camera on, you shoot what you want to do, and you can turn it off. Rather than turn it on like kind of you're going to be at that. I was definitely at that point in season 1. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to shoot at first until I got into the rhythm of things. But yeah, and I think just keeping it simple too. Like if you stick, I think a lot of people probably heard the rule of thirds. It's let me see if I can do it on the screen. There's 2 lines like this. Put your horizon on one line or the other line, or your subject on one of those points, and just keep it simple, and you can get cool shots that way.
Cool.
Yeah.
And when you're shooting a video like that, Matt, do you always think about the edit while you're capturing?
Oh, of course. Yeah, I only shoot if I can't put it in the edit, I won't shoot it. If it doesn't make sense, I won't shoot it. Because like using the battery and takes time, and filling up footage. That's more backup time, that kind of thing. So everything's precious in the backwoods, so you want to conserve. But yeah, it's
Because I find sometimes when I'm shooting a video, and now this is just personal experience, but I'm back there and I'm shooting a video, and I'm getting a shot, and it's a good shot, but it just does not fit. You know what I mean? Like maybe it just does not fit in the storyline. So basically, I've shot something that I didn't need to. Or maybe I should have put more thought into actually thinking about the edit. Where's this going to fit into the scene, right?
Yeah, I think that probably happens to all of us. We get like, oh, this is a beautiful shot, or this is a really cool shot, but you get home and you're like, that doesn't really fit. And I'm sure we all have a catalog of shots that have never made it to air. So you just kind of gotta swallow your pride and just be like, okay, it's okay. And it's more beneficial if you just stick to your story than putting in random shots that look really cool. It's kind of frustrating watching videos where they just randomly put in a drone shot and you're like, oh, okay.
I think you also have to be willing to work for your shots. Some of my favorite shots are the ones that I've had to work for. Like, if you saw the video from Wednesday, I did some shots where I placed the camera on the riverbank to get some shots of me going by. That takes time. It means I got to paddle all the way down the river and paddle back up. Or getting those sunrise shots. It's something really satisfying about having to get up early, plan your shot, get the shot. Well, if you're with other people while they're still sleeping, and it's nice to be able to do that. Also, you're talking about stuff that doesn't make the edit. The way I shoot a lot of the 2 Men in a Canoe videos is, I shoot throughout the day. Usually at the end of the day, I'll sit down, film myself, film my buddy Tim, or whoever else is with me, explaining the day. So that becomes the narrative for the day. But there'll be oftentimes, let's say I'm filming my buddy Tim, and he'll start talking about something that happened, and I realizing I didn't shoot any of that. I have no footage to go with it, so that never actually happened because I don't have the footage for it. So yeah.
My tip would be to don't be afraid to use the camera like a paintbrush and put it into all sorts of interesting places. And to build on what Matt said, a lot of filmmakers just become cognizant and ever aware of what the lens already sees before they've shot the shot. And so after years of experience, you just kind of quickly you come into an environment and you're able to quickly weed out all the types of shots that you could get, but you know are already kind of like been done or not interesting. And then you'll just try something new, or, you know, try to shoot from a different angle, or get down low on the ground, or show it from a different perspective, or just put the camera in a really interesting place that even you with your years of experience don't know what it's going to turn out looking like, so that you might surprise yourself and create something new that looks interesting and different. And so that's why I always encourage people to use their cameras like paintbrushes. Go out there, try all sorts of different things, and then afterwards, if something catches your eye, and you really like that, you know, you can pursue more of that in the future and build on it. But a lot of our interesting shots that are in our videos are because I'm just kind of bored of creating the same shots over and over again. And I really just want to try something new. For just as an example, every single day of the trip, we'll film anywhere from 2 to 3 hours of raw content for just that one day. But I'll refine it down and just use 15 to 25 minutes of that content. So experiment, try lots of different things. And then in post-production, that's where you can decide what you really liked and what you didn't.
Something you should think about too is, in terms of story, when you're telling the story, even if it's something, okay, we're hiking this portage from this lake to this lake and you want to get footage of it. Don't just shoot from your point of view the whole portage. You got to think, okay, what other angles can I get? Because you want to have variety of shots. So you put the camera on either a tripod or on a rock or a tree stump and film some shots of you walking by. Get some shots from your point of view. Maybe mount it to the canoe, get some shots. I mean, it takes time, but if you have a variety of different shots, you can tell that story in an interesting way visually, rather than it just being, okay, this is us going down the portage trail.
Yeah.
The one thing I find, this is true with a lot of YouTubers, at least especially in the outdoor community, where everybody seems to have at least a handful of their videos have the same intro, where you're showing the whole hike in, walking past the screen, walking into it, walking past it, and trying to think of things outside the box that's a little bit different, right? The one thing I like about the three of you, and Matt, you seem to be a master at this one here in Mark in the Park, are shots from the ground, the different perspective. And when we were discussing the other night this show, we were talking about how most people, you got this perspective here and that's it, this. They don't think about up here and they don't think about down here or out at an angle, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Thinking outside of this window.
Yeah, I read in a book once. It's a cool way to. I challenge actually everyone to do this. Go outside, find a flower, and shoot it from your point of view, which would be straight down. And then take another shot, literally lay on the ground and shoot it from the side. That's an angle that no one ever sees, because no one ever lays on the ground and looks at flowers. So that makes people look at it and go like, wow, that's really cool. I've never seen that part of the flower. And if you look, like mushrooms, a lot of people like underneath the mushroom. Mushrooms are really short. If you can get underneath them and look at them, it's kind of cool. So just think of something that no one has ever shot before, something you've never seen on the screen before, and you'll have some surprising feedback.
That's a big part of why I got into filming with gimbals, was because typically when you're in a canoe, you can't shoot really long focal lengths. Like they end up just being like really shaky.
Yeah.
It's really difficult to stabilize with just your hand. So then I was like, how do I make long focal lengths work in a canoe? And then you just, problem solve and troubleshoot until you get a beautiful looking telephoto shot in the canoe. And it's just like, the tripod shot is such an easy shot, but really challenge yourself to, leave the tripod somewhere else and use the tree as your tripod, or use a rock as your tripod, use your canoe as a tripod. Just put the camera in different places and get different angles. That's
the neat thing about these new, like these little style, you could clamp that around a tree branch somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And set it, forget it, go do your shot, and then come back for it later.
Yeah, I have this on my GoPro, so I can mount it onto the canoe and get some different kind of shots. It's not long enough, and I'm looking into different ways to make it longer. But yeah, so you can get different angles that, again, people have never seen before. No one ever sees a shot from way over the bow looking back at people. So it captivates people when you see that.
Now on Ben's latest video that he just posted today.
Yeah, the one that was on today. Do you want me to show that some of the
sure. I pointed it out to you that I recognized it there, and I asked you how you did the shot. You want me to pull it up?
Yeah, why not? Yeah, I'll play it. Yeah, you all set? Okay, Here we go. So this is just paddling down the river.
So these are some unique shots. And I was wondering how he got him. I thought he was actually using a drone or something.
You're not allowed a drone in the park.
No, true.
So this is an example of putting the camera down and leaving it and having to come back. So it gets you some nice shots.
Every time I do shots like that, I always say, got to come back for the camera when you go for the camera. Right? Yeah. You never know.
So these ones were done with my 360 camera. And what this allows you to do, first of all, it stitches out the pole that's holding it, so you don't see it. So right now it's sticking out over the side of the canoe, and I can choose where I want to look in post-production and move it around. So you'll see I'll pan across here.
So you got that mounted in a rod holder? Is that what I see there?
It was actually on the same kind of clamps that Matt had there.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're called magic arms. Mine was $25 on Amazon. It's super cheap, and if it breaks, it's like whatever. I'll buy another one.
Friction arms, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And
very
make
unique.
sure they're tightened though, because
You said you almost lost it, eh?
well, yeah, because I had it on a pole and the clamp wasn't tight enough. So when I did one of the shots with me pushing off the bank, the second after you see me push off, it fell sideways. I had to catch it. So
Wow.
Yeah, and super quick tip for people listening in: GoPros do not float on their own.
no.
If you lose your GoPro, it's going to go to the bottom of the lake. So
Yeah, I always tie mine off right here. And
Good idea with a little rope.
I tie it to the canoe. Even on a portage, if it fell off on a portage, and there's a 3K portage, and you got to go look for it, it's just a pain in the butt.
Well, don't they have a voice function, the GoPro 8s and 7s? You should say, "Where are you?" and it talks back. I'm over here. Martin Pine is asking, do you usually have a story when you go out, or do you just discover the story while you're out there?
Discover it, but be aware of it as you're doing it. Like, think about it. If you're going on a day hike when you're at a place, think about, okay, where are we going? You want to make sure that you have a beginning, middle, and an end kind of thing for each thing that you're talking about, because it's happened to me many times where you get lazy out there shooting and you shoot the beginning, you get some great stuff, and then you realize I never really finished that thing. So when you edit it, you either got to leave it all out or have an unsatisfying end. Like, how did you guys get back to camp?
It really depends, and particularly the days where you're just going from like point A to point B, and nothing of consequence happens in the middle. That's like the most uninteresting story and the most difficult to turn into a story in post. So if I know ahead of time, if we're just going from point A to point B and it's a short paddle and it's like nothing really exciting is going to happen along the way or super interesting, then I might inject a little humor into it, or try to spice up the edit in a different way, or just show things in a way that people haven't seen before. But storytelling really depends. If we're just point A to point B, I'll inject something into it. But if I don't know how it's going to unfold, then I'd prefer to go in without a narrative and just see what unfolds from the adventure.
Well, I should add something quick. You and I were talking about this, Chris, about shooting when you don't feel like it. Like when it's crappy weather and it's raining, or you're dead tired from a portage, or whatever it is, that's when you have to shoot, because that's the stuff that if you're just talking about your trip, that's what you're going to talk about. So you want to make sure that you film in those situations, even if you don't feel like it, even if the conditions are horrible, because that's way more interesting than it being a beautiful sunny day paddling across a lake.
Yeah. And like when I was filming Joe, I had like a loose idea of a narrative for the intro that I wanted to tell, but beyond that, I didn't know what was going to happen. And a lot of things went wrong. And as a filmmaker, when things go wrong, you should be really happy because all of a sudden now you have some adversity that your character has to get around. And this is another part of getting the shot that's really important. Is it's important for people to recognize that viewers and your audience will project themselves onto the subject or the person of interest in your video. So it's really important to not just show tons and tons of vista shots and lots of drone shots and lots of tree shots. You need to put people in your video so that someone has somebody to relate to or to project themselves onto, or somebody that they can imagine themselves being in their shoes. So it's, in terms of getting the shot, it's really important to look for putting people in your shots and putting them into challenging situations.
I find too sometimes when you go out though, there's the storyline's not always necessarily going to be there. If you're going on, say, for a 7-day canoe trip, sometimes, like you said, Chris, if something goes wrong, the story unfolds the way it unfolds. Right? You don't want to try and turn it into something it's not. Right?
No.
Somebody whose video making skills that I really appreciate as well is Brad Jennings. If everybody's familiar with Brad Jennings, he goes out and he does these canoe routes, And he doesn't tell him like he's a tourist. He tells him like he's a documentarian, or what's another term. He's telling you about the route. He's not doing it like it's his own souvenir. Right?
Yeah.
So he's producing the video like you guys would much produce a corporate video. And that's the way he's presenting it, which makes the story so, well, not the story, but the video so much more interesting because you're learning about it. You're not learning about, yeah, okay, I'm just going to make a tea now, right? You following on that? He's turning it into a documentary rather than, and I guess there's a difference between storytelling and documentary.
It's still telling story. Still
That's the big word of the day. Just made that up.
It's easier it's easier to make a documentary out of something where you don't know how things are going to unfold. But like if you're just on vacation and you happen to be filming your vacation, and I had to mention for a lot of our videos in Algonquin, they're really just our vacations that we're taking the camera along with. When you do know that you're just going from point A to point B, it's a little bit more challenging to make that a more documentary style film, just because you already know what's ahead of you and you know what to expect. And so it's more about the human experience, I guess, going through those areas, and less about what's going to unfold and how's this going to happen.
Right.
Yeah, like when I pitched the show to Rogers, I had to have a story. Like I went in and I was like, "Here's the story," and he actually said, "I don't like that. Make it better." Because when I go out there we're out there for 12 days, like we do a top and a tail kind of thing, but 10 days of shooting, and in those days I need to come home with 10 episodes. So if I don't come home with enough good content every day, then it's bad. Like I failed in my objective kind of thing. So going out with a predetermined story is good. If things change and they're better, go with that, definitely. But always kind of have a backup plan in the back of your head. If things don't work out, that things go bad and the story gets better kind of thing.
So I was going to ask that because this season 2 of Mark in the Park, you are quite literally producing an entire video per day, pretty much.
Yeah.
Right. So with that being said, the amount of footage that you must be capturing on a daily basis is like mind blowing to me, because you're capturing for one episode what I would be capturing for a whole week on a canoe trip. How much footage are you actually capturing for a day's video?
I think we only capture 2 to 3 hours, but I'm very diligent on like when I pick up, and because the camera takes so much power, I like when I turn it on, the record button is the next button I hit, because I'm just so conscientious of that. But sometimes we talk out shots. Sometimes I can just point. Mark is really great for this. I can point the camera at him and he'll just start talking, and he says really interesting things. It's very difficult to find somebody who's like that. But that's because he's got so much knowledge and past with the park. So, but I shoot hours, but I'm shooting with a purpose too. Like I'm shooting specific shots for the story. If it doesn't fit, I don't bother with it, and we just stay focused on the goal, which is the story of the series. In this case, it was seeing history of the park.
Yeah. Now, Ben, yourself too. You actually have a show that's on
Bell 5. Yeah, 5
Tell
TV
us
one.
about that one there. Like, explain the presence of like how much shooting you're actually doing for your show as well.
Well, we're shooting over shorter time periods than Matt. Typically, it's a full day or 2 days, depending on what we're shooting. So basically, get outside. We're exploring different outdoor activities in different places. Like the first season, we did a backcountry camping trip. We did exploring the caves in Warsaw Caves. We did just a day paddle. We did a bunch of that. And then in the second season, we've done like a winter backcountry camping trip with somebody who'd never done it before. We paddled down the part of the Trent Canal system in canoes, which was really cool, going through the locks. So we're shooting as much every day as possible. I'm going into it too, keeping in mind, okay, where are we starting? Where are we ending? Like you're going to let things unfold as they happen, but it's still keeping in mind a story. Like even a day paddle, we have a start and a destination. So you set that up at the beginning. This is where we're starting. This is where we have to get to, and this is everything that happened on the way to getting there. Because otherwise it's just shots of us paddling.
Yeah, you got to fill up kind of the 5 W's kind of thing: who, what, when, where, why, and how. Yeah. But the most important is why. Why are you there? Why are you doing this?
Yeah.
If you have no point of being there, you're just like, I'm just here.
Yeah.
It's like,
and some of it too is exploring new things. Like we also did a stand-up paddleboard episode in season 2. I've never stand-up paddleboarded before, so it was about me learning how to do that. And I thought I was getting good by the end, but when I watched the footage, I was so stiff. Like I did not look good. I was not comfortable.
Yeah. Sometimes if you go into an environment and you don't know how the story is going to end, and you just want to see how things are going to unfold, those are the situations where you sometimes find yourself filming more so that you can pull the story out in post. And I film just as much as Matt does, like 2 to 3 hours per day. And some days, like the story actually isn't that interesting, and then I had to pull it out in the edit and condense it down to 15 minutes or 25 minutes. But yeah, in those situations, if you don't know how it's going to unfold, but it's also not a super interesting day, film lots and then pull some kind of narrative out of it in post. But if you sort of know what you're getting yourself into and you can sort of visualize what's going to happen, then it's easier to come into it with a specific story, I'd say, in mind.
It's interesting. In season 1 of Get Outside, the episode that we shot the most for was one on day hikes. I did a big, long day hike, and we have tons and tons of amazing shots of us hiking. It wasn't enough to tell the story because all we were doing was going on this hike. We're just hiking this trail. I ended up having to do another day shooting on a different trail and combine the two and make it about day hikes versus a day hike. Whereas some of the other episodes where like a backcountry camping one, it's quite efficient in the usage of the shots because I know, okay, this is us packing up the canoe to get going. Okay, we got that. We need some canoeing shots. Great. We're arriving at camp. We're set. I know all the things that we need to show. So you end up shooting less and using more than when you really don't know what the heck it's going to be.
Yeah,
sure. That's cool. I see a cool question, but we're going to save that for the editing section. So Zach Van Veen, if you want to pop that question back in again once we get to the editing part, I know they'll have some stuff to say on that. Jay's Way has a question for Matt. They're asking, your intro landscape pan shots are so smooth. Is that keyframing and post sliders or handheld?
This puppy right here. A very, very big, this is 8 pounds, or no, 10 pounds. This tripod's 10 pounds. This is a professional head. It's obviously Roger's own. It's a company called Satcheler, and they're known for very, very fluid pans and tilts. So I love using this for smooth pans and tilts. But I try to, like I do sometimes use my hands, and that's you're holding on for dear life and you're going as slow as you can, and luckily the camera has some good stabilization, so but I use mainly that tripod for the panning shots because it's worth its weight in gold.
Mm-hmm. But there again, it's the trade-off, right? You've got the weight versus the shot, right?
The crew member I brought along, he wasn't too happy. He wanted to like break it down somehow and put it, because I only use it at camp. So when we're traveling, it's out strapped on the side of a pack or something, and it's like 10 pounds on one side and you're leaning over kind of thing. So so that's an improvement for next year. Is we'll condense it a little bit more and put it somewhere else maybe.
And this is something that we were talking about in the pre-show, which is just like, as filmmakers, we're always riding the line between like how much gear we take and what kind of a compromise it makes to the actual experience. And so we're always sort of like skirting the line as to how high we can bump the production values without it like really compromising the trip itself. And yeah, that is a constant challenge.
It's a tough line. Yeah. And that's kind of the line too with solar versus batteries. People say, "Oh, bring all batteries." It's like, well, actually, the batteries outweigh the solar equipment after a certain amount of days. So, well, I'm going to bring solar equipment.
Cool. So, if we get into things like multi-camera shots, does any of you three use multi-camera shots, like for getting one scene?
Always clap.
Oh yeah, for your syncing the audio. Yeah, I've taken multiple cameras with me and tried to get multiple shots. Like, I'll maybe mount 2 or 3 GoPros to a canoe so you can get all different angles at the same time, and that's great. I have taken a variety of different cameras, thinking of using them for different purposes, which is great if you can find a reason to use them all. Sometimes it's just too much; you're carrying way more, and I do find sometimes it's like having too much choice. Okay, which camera am I going to shoot this with? And you end up shooting a little bit less because you've given yourself too many choices. So sometimes, and actually even in Get Outside, the first season I shot always with 2 cameras. For the majority of season 2, we limited it to 1 camera at a time. I just found it much easier to keep track of everything as we were shooting it, rather than worrying about, okay, that camera's getting that shot, that camera's getting that shot. I mean, we do it occasionally if we needed to, like adding a GoPro shot or something like that. But yeah, you can.
Yeah. For Talking by the Fire, we last year I just went back and forth, floated back and forth. This year we brought this little guy, and I used it as a wide shot. I had to shoot fully wide because if I zoomed in at all, the light would just disappear. But in editing, it makes it so much easier too, because you can cut out words, you can cut out big sections too, because sometimes they'll say something that doesn't make sense, or maybe it's a little cringeworthy, like you're like, oh, why'd you say that, kind of thing. So you have a space to cut it out and something to cover with.
A conversation is great to use multiple cameras for.
Yes.
But if it's just people going out shooting their own YouTube videos, you don't really need to worry about that. No. I've done it where I faked a few things before, like had my buddy Tim, say something, or I'd ask him from behind the camera, "Oh, what are we doing here?" or whatever he'll say, and then I'll just turn the camera around and get myself asking, so I can use both. So that's a way to get around that kind of stuff. Except if it's a conversation, then you're definitely going to be wanting a couple of cameras.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, you had a perfect segue there, Matt, for 2 of the next topics that I wanted to talk about, being filming others and then lighting, especially when it comes to night shots, right? So let's start with filming others. Any hints or tips or tricks, anything to filming people interview style?
No, you both have to be on the same page when you're going into it. Because if you just ask one question and start shooting, they might look at you funny and then not answer it the way you want them to answer it. So maybe do a little, not a practice, but like just a review. Like I'm gonna ask you this, this, and this. Just give it some thought, kind of thing, and that might help their answers and their responses a little bit better because they know what's coming. But getting in a good relationship with the person you're shooting is a very important aspect, because if they don't like you, they're not going to talk. If they like you, they're going to talk a lot, and they're going to feel comfortable around you, and they're going to ignore the camera, and they're going to feel like they're just talking to somebody else, kind of thing. So just make them feel comfortable and treat it just like a normal conversation.
Yeah. So now, Chris, you're pretty used to shooting, obviously, a person, because you and Julie are always on your trips together.
Yeah.
So you have a what was the term you used? I forget. Earlier you kept using a talent. You have a talent.
Yeah.
We're all talented.
Yeah.
When you're shooting your videos for your own channel, and Julie is the subject matter, is it like anything rehearsed or everything? Does she just know what to do because she knows you?
Yeah, I'm really fortunate in the sense that like Julia knows from experience like what you sort of need in front of the camera to tell some of the narrative. So I'm really fortunate that I've worked with Julia in that sense a lot. And she just really kind of lights up in front of the camera. Like she likes to be a bit of a goof in front of the camera, and that's fun, and it's fun to capture that. But when I'm filming corporate clients, Matt's point is really, really important. You really do have to build a rapport with them and make them feel comfortable enough to open up. Because you want to try to get that deeper why that I can't remember who mentioned it earlier on. I think it was Matt who was talking about the deeper why. The why is what people really resonate with, but trying to get the why out of people, what they believe in and what they're passionate about and why they get out of bed in the morning. That's the really important stuff that's hard to get out of people. And that's where rapport really pays off. So you want to build trust with the people who are on camera and be able to ask them those really deep questions so that they convey the deeper stuff, the stuff that we all resonate with. And filming with corporate clients filming people in general, something that's really important is to remind them that context is important, because it's so easy as a filmmaker to ask somebody, what is your favorite color, and they just say green, but then I'm going to cut myself out, and so I always had to remind people that they need to provide context to what they're speaking about. So they have to say something like, my favorite color is green, but something deeper as to why they like green, but that's challenging, and that's something that just builds over time. Julie knows, but if you're filming, say, your family or your friends, you might have to tell them that they just have to be a little bit more expressive and provide a little more context and open up.
Yeah, it's kind of like in English class when you're a little kid kind of thing, and you're first answering questions. You just answered it with one word, and the teacher said, make a full sentence out of it. And I always tell that to people. I'm like, I'm going to ask you a question, but answer with a full sentence, because people don't know what the question was before it. Yeah. So always answer with the question in it, and it'll make a lot more sense, and it'll be a lot clearer to people at home.
If you're filming with other people, like in Get Outside, obviously I was filming with other people in I think in every one of the episodes. So because of the way we were telling the story, I will sit down with them afterwards after we've done something, and they'll sort of tell the story of the day. But because I'm also on camera, I'll go first so they can actually get to see the kind of thing I'm talking about, like talking about the context of the day, elaborating on things. And then when I'm filming them, I'll try and give them time to get comfortable. So you might ask a few things. Okay, what do we do at the beginning of the day? And say, well, I got up out of bed. Okay, great. Go on to the next question. Go on to the next one. But then come back to the ones that we've already done once they've got comfortable with it. And then you're going to get better answers.
Right. Yeah. And I guess it's better to forewarn a person rather than just jamming a camera in their face, right?
Yeah, depending on the circumstances.
Where, you're with your buddies and you're just shooting a shot, and then they happen to look up and they see the camera's like, oh, they scoot out of the shot, right? So yeah, it's always better, I guess, to warn them that you're actually going to be, doing them in a shot. What about camera angles when you're talking to a person? Is it better to have just a headshot, torso?
It depends on what you're going for. Like the way most of us are now, head and shoulders is fine. Usually, like, I'll put them off to one side. They may be looking at the camera depending on the context of the video. If it's like a corporate video, usually they're looking off camera, that kind of thing. So just a nice composition. It can be wider, it can be closer, whatever.
And I guess that's where say a dual or a triple camera system could come in if you're shooting solo.
Potentially,
you could have that side angle and one straight on, and then maybe one wide angle with you in the picture too or something. They do it on the news all the time, right?
And I really like to use, for interview shots, I really like to use portrait lenses. It's a longer focal length and a little bit more flattering, as opposed to a wide angle that might be closer to fill up the same frame. So I like to remind the talent that I'm using like a really nice lens that's quite flattering. And then you'll almost see them like they'll relax a little bit because they know that you're using a nice lens that's going to make them look nice.
I guess I phrased that wrong. When you're videotaping somebody,
it's not
I'm just showing my age, man. When I say filming all the time,
but it's not tape anymore. We don't use videotape.
Yeah,
this is true. This is true. Okay.
Digital filmmaking. There you go. Filming is fine.
Digital. When you're digital filmmaking, when you're videoing somebody. Okay, back into lighting then. Lighting is so important. I think the first thing any videographer or photographer learns is the big faux pas of backlight. You know, losing your subject as a silhouette with the bright sunlight in the background.
I like backlight.
Well, too much is not a good thing, right?
Yeah. No, backlight. It's dramatic. You want to be able to see the person. Or at least make out what's important. So like if it's somebody just doing something, let's say in front of a campfire and they're backlit because of the fire, but you're seeing what they're doing in silhouette, that's fine. If you need to see their face and them talking, you're going to need some light on them. Oh, can I show another clip?
Yeah, sure.
This is one I really enjoy.
Ready to go?
Yeah. This is from the winter camping episode of Get Outside. So this is at almost minus 30, sitting around the campfire. But obviously we weren't getting enough light off the campfire. So we brought, kind of like what you had, Matt, there, an LED light. But this was a bigger, it was like a roll-up light. It's actually the light I'm using to light myself right now. And I had, if we talk more about lighting, we'll talk about color temperature. So I made a warm light to match kind of the fire. And you can kind of see it flickering a bit. But so what I did, it had the person holding the light, moving it back and forth, so it would change the shadows a bit. So, and then we had to light a little bit here for the other scenes. But see, even though we have headlamps on, we have a light shining on us. But it works because you're seeing the light in the scene.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I always carry one of these little LED panels. They get pretty bright, some of them.
Yeah.
And they're pretty light. They're cheap. It is another battery that you do have to charge. But usually the battery will last the entire time because you're only shooting at night, and most of us only shoot at night for maybe an hour, and that's it.
Yeah.
And the light's not on the whole time.
I'm just going to go grab another piece of equipment while you guys talk.
Sure.
A really handy tip for lighting in the backcountry is just to use your headlamp. So take your headlamp off and put it somewhere just off camera, but aimed at the talent. Having said that, generally I try not to use lights in the backcountry, and I'd almost rather just go with a super fast prime lens. Like for instance, the lens that's on this camera right now is an f1.8, so it lets in a lot of light, and then it's actually on a lens turbo 2, which is essentially a focal reducer, which gets you an additional half stop of light. And what that means is at nighttime, the campfire is enough light just to get a really crisp, clean image. And so rather than using light that doesn't match the campfire light, typically what's coming out of a lot of these LED products is more blue and white light. But I really love the warmth of the campfire light. So I'd rather leave lights out of it and just use a really fast lens that's letting in a lot of light.
Yeah.
Yeah. For talking by the fire, we use a f1.4 35mm lens.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we shoot talking by the fire for so long that we can't keep the fire going, kind of thing, to keep it bright enough. So we do use external light just for when it goes away. But I put orange gel on it, so it looks It's the same color temperature. As,
which is what I did on that.
I was wondering about that.
yeah.
I actually picked up on that. I was wondering how you kept it. Yeah.
Years ago, I did a short film in the backcountry, and I needed some campfire shots, and it was just they were pretty close ups. I was doing of the cast, and the campfire itself wasn't enough, so we took a bunch of tea lights, put them on like a piece of wood, or they might not have been tea lights; it might have been bigger candles, and put that up close to them. And I remember shooting them and going, I'm not getting enough light, so get closer to it, get closer to it, get closer to it. And it worked for lighting. And then I realized afterwards, like when they got to move away, they were getting like their face burnt from how hot it was being so close to it.
For every foot you move closer to your light doubles.
Yeah. So here's another light, an LED light, which you can smaller and can get pretty bright.
Wow.
And it's basically, this is the same size as the GoPro session. So you can even mount it in the GoPro things. They last on the full power. It lasts about 20 minutes from a full charge. It's internal battery though. So like it's showing red there. It's going to go off any second. So no warning. It'll just go off. So, but in a pinch, these are good too.
Yeah. And as another backcountry pinch technique for lighting is you can just use your cell phone if you brought along. Put it on a white screen and crank the screen brightness all the way up, and you'll get a nice ambient glow from that as well.
Yeah, or a lot of people bring little lights for their inside their tent. I know I have one.
Yeah,
a solar powered light. It puts off a pretty good amount of light, so you can bring that out.
Depending on what they are, though, I have a Lume Cube, which I love, but the flicker rate on it is on video. All you see is flicker. Yeah. So that's hopefully do some tests with it, and then you'll see if it works or not.
Yeah.
Cool. Now what about lighting nightmares? What kind of scenarios should somebody absolutely keep away from when it comes to lighting? Something that's totally going to ruin a shot, like shooting right into the sun or just shooting in a black area. Like, is there anything that stands out as something you should not do?
Just be aware. I think the biggest thing is your making sure your camera's white balance is set for the lighting that you're in, or understanding it at least, because there's nothing worse than having your camera set for, let's say, a warm light like a tungsten light, or warmer like your campfire, and then not changing your setting and then going shooting in the day, and then you have this horrible blue look to it. Otherwise, if you got enough light for your camera to see, then that's pretty much all you need.
Yeah, and Dennis, I would say the most challenging light to film in for a filmmaker is usually like right around noon when the light is coming straight down, because you're now getting shadows on the talent's eyes, and you're seeing shadows come off the hair and things like that. And the best time to film is either early in the morning or during the golden hour at nighttime, when that sunlight coming in through the atmosphere is much more diffuse and warm. So as a filmmaker, I don't worry too much about backlit shots, and sometimes like Ben mentioned, backlit shots look like really interesting just because they're a little different. And you can expose differently for backlight if you have to. But the most challenging thing, I think, for a filmmaker is like noon to like 2 o'clock in the afternoon when that light is just coming straight down and it's super bright.
Also, if most people have their cameras set for auto exposure, which is fine for the most part, but just be aware of what's in the shot. I often will wear my Tilly hat, and it's a very light color beige. And in bright sunlight, that just either burns out completely white, or it exposes for that and you can't see my face. So you gotta be aware of those kind of things. By the way, somebody was asking about my the brand of this one. This was a Lytra, I think they call it Lytra Light Torch, or light. And there's also Lume Cube makes them as well. So there you go.
Sure again. Left is right, right is left.
Yeah.
It was up, down is down.
Yeah.
Another thing with lighting is like camera technology's gotten way better. So the dynamic range. So dynamic range is the darkest point it can pick up and the brightest point it can pick up. Like the camera I bring, I think it does 12 or 14 stops of dynamic range. So I can shoot somebody in direct sunlight, but still see that shadowy part on the side of the head. But if I use a cheaper camera like this one, it's blown out on one side and completely dark on the other side. So that's kind of where you get what you pay for in terms of sensor abilities when it comes to cameras. But I mean, like, you have to make sure that your exposure is correct and you choose what you want to expose for. Like if you want to see the details in the clouds versus their face, or you want to see their face over the clouds kind of thing, you have to pick one or the other.
Yeah. And on really bright, Dennis, on really bright sunny days, a trick for doing talking shots, getting nicely exposed talking shots, like right during midday sun, is to put the subject underneath a tree in the shade, and then expose for their skin that way. I worked for a corporate client many years ago who didn't want any lights on their shots, and everything was natural light. And then we filmed them outside quite a bit. And the easiest way to film them was just to stick them underneath a tree and expose that way, and get nice diffuse light underneath the tree.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, there's so much to know, so much to learn.
Yeah.
Maybe I should be one of your Sherpas there on a trip there, Matt. And I can learn a lot from you there out there.
You can carry the 80 pounds of camera gear there.
Okay. Then somebody could carry my 75-pound back.
I wouldn't do that to you.
That's all right. Okay, well, you know what? Unless anybody has anything else they'd like to add to the getting the shot section.
I can add one small thing.
Sure.
I do shoot. This is an infrared light. And this camera picks up infrared light because sometimes we shoot at 5:30, 6 in the morning, and I don't want to turn on this LED light and blast these guys' eyeballs out. We also keep it just in case something shows up on camp and it's in the middle of the night. You want to shoot it, but not you don't want it to know that you're shooting. But shooting with infrared is kind of a cool. Some cameras have it built in, so you might want to check it out. Your camera might already have it, and it's kind of a cool feature.
You want to hold that up again, Matt? We'll put you full screen there.
It's from Polaroid. You might be able to see a little bit if I turn it on, actually. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Cool.
But this camera has it built in. It's only got a tiny, tiny little light down here, and this actually interrupts it. So that's why I have this, which goes right next to it. So you can see it in Mark in the Park a lot.
I used to shoot a lot with those. I did for quite a few years stuff for the paranormal investigation group. So we were always shooting with night vision. It's a lot of fun.
Bigfoot.
Are those hoods a good idea?
What's that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Are those hoods a good idea?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the primary function of that is what?
Cuts out lens flare from light
Yeah.
sources shining on it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Won't cut out everything, but it helps.
That goes into what I was asking you about nightmare light situations. A good number of my videos from when I used to shoot with this, I always got these laser beams shooting down from the sky because I knew exactly what it was. Always a clean lens, right? But I always had these laser beams darting through my head or something because it was capturing the sun and doing that light flare, right? So
bouncing around. And another thing too is like, we're rough with our cameras, but like it protects your lens. So if you have it, and this is like $10 to replace. This lens is $2,000 to replace. So having that lens hood on all the time is just a good protection of your lens.
the only thing I find is with my hood on there, I sometimes in some of my videos I'll notice just a little light shadow in each corner.
Oh yeah,
right.
Okay.
So I don't know, maybe it's a cheap hood or I don't know what the problem is, but it's picking up just the edge of that hood, right?
Yeah, you gotta get the right hood for the right lens. Like if you have a wide lens, you don't put on a really deep hood because you're gonna see it.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Let's see here. And is there any other questions about getting the shot? Well, we'll use this one to go into the editing one here, seeing it's the last question I could see right now. Panel on taking stills. Do you use a flash?
Usually not.
No.
If I needed to, maybe I would, but I don't bring one with me. So
Only inside if I take a family portrait. That's about it. It's another thing that you got to kind of set up and get right and test.
Yeah.
And
if you want to get creative, though, it is kind of cool to do a long exposure at night and then have a flash in your hand and walk around, keep yourself out of the shot, and just like flash different parts of the scene so you can light paint. Or you can do it with a flashlight as well, which is kind of fun.
Mm-hmm. You guys want to book 1 year today?
Okay, sure.
Do this again? Okay. There you go, Evan. We'll do this again in a year for you. Okay, so we'll get on to the next topic. Heck, man, we're almost coming up to the close of the show, 9 o'clock. So it looks like we're going to be doing a bit of overtime. I hope you guys on panel are okay with that. If you have to take off, I fully understand. And everybody in the chat, I'm hoping you're all picking up a little bit of information from this anyways. I know I sure am. And that's why I'm asking so many questions. So next, we're going to be talking about dabbling into some editing. I know we have a couple of PC people here, and then we also have a couple of Mac people, right? So we have a little bit, and, we're not going to get into the whole Mac versus PC battle. The one question that I can't remember his name, but he was asking about oh my gosh, I'm having a brain fart. What was it? I'll let him put the question back up there again because it was an interesting question. Let's see here. Actually, you want to go back one step?
Sure.
One more step. John, Backcountry Angling was asking about videoing stars and northern lights.
Oh,
that's a cool one. Thanks, John. We'll get into the editing in 1 sec.
Time lapse.
Something that's really important for getting shots, time lapses at nighttime, is to know when the moon is out, because often the moon will cause everything else to overexpose, or it'll just be too much light to catch the stars around it. So look ahead at your moon phases to see when the moon is going to be out there, and you'll get the best time lapses of the stars when the moon isn't out, or after the moon is set, or before it rises. But sometimes if you're looking for beautiful star lapses, sometimes you have to dance around the moon a little bit.
And you got to do them.
I was going to say, the important thing is to mention that it's not usually video. Your video cameras are not going to catch it. You're doing stills and doing a time lapse.
Yeah.
And that will take all night. It could take all night depending on how quickly you're shooting.
Super long exposures. And usually like with either a built-in intervalometer or an external intervalometer, because to get the light that you need for the stars, sometimes you might be running 30-second exposures. And if you need 24 frames per second, that's many hours for just a few seconds of video. So you want to be able to set the camera up to do it on its own, so that you're not up all night.
Another tip is pre-focus on the horizon when there's still enough light, because sometimes, especially with the way lenses are made for cameras today, like DSLRs, in the old days it was infinity. It was at the end of the lens. Now the focus ring just keeps going. It electronically finds infinity, and when it's pitch black, your camera's not going to be able to focus, and you're not going to be able to look through the viewfinder and focus on the stars. So pre-focus, leave your camera set up while it's still light. Yeah. Then when the stars come out. So.
And if you forget to do that, take a picture, roll the focus a bit. Take a picture, roll the focus. It's a bit time consuming, but it's a good way to fix the problem if you have it.
And some of the best cameras for getting time lapses at nighttime are like the full frame cameras, like the 5D Mark IIIs and the 4s and the 6s. Like the only thing that I really miss about moving to Micro Four Thirds is that it's a little weaker in terms of getting time lapses at night. But the older cameras, like the 5D Mark III, like I've taken that out a few times in the backcountry, and it gets amazing time lapses at nighttime. It's so much better at collecting light.
Very good. Very good. Well, I hope that answered your question there, John. Okay, so now we will jump on to the editing portion here. So in this section here, I wanted to talk a bit about editing software, timeline, storytelling. We already sort of touched on the storytelling, right? So no need to go over that once again. maybe bit of special effects, cuts and transitions, music choices, where to get some good tunes, video length, what to keep and what to cut, and maybe how long it takes to edit a video. Before we get going into that, I want to ask people who shoots video only to edit it in one day and have it up. Put a number 1 in the chat. I'm just curious to see how many people are like me.
I sometimes do, by the way.
Yeah.
Sometimes. Yeah.
It's a simple one-day shoot.
Okay, so let's talk about editing software. Who uses what?
Final Cut Pro 10. And
Same.
in the interest of full disclosure, so I have been an internal editor at Apple working on the Final Cut Pro 10 team. So I might be a little partial to that, but I will say that with the fact that you can do any of these types of edits with any editor, really.
Yeah, I edit with Adobe software, Premiere Pro. But yeah, exactly. It's the final product that matters. There's free stuff that you can use, which is going to get you the same results. So
that seems to be one of the great debates. Everybody always says, I use this, I use this, I use this, I use this, right? There again, just like coming back to your camera, you learn your camera, you learn your editing software, right? And you work what becomes comfortable. I know I use just iMovie on my Mac here, but it's so limiting. There's not much you can do some stuff with it, but it's fairly limiting, right?
You know what's really bizarre? I was going to say what's really bizarre. Some iMovie is totally valid to use.
Yeah.
But when you're used to doing it on professional software, I cannot figure out how to do anything on something like iMovie. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. So it totally works, but when you're used to one thing, you go, wow, I can't figure this out.
The Pro stuff is really good for making really fine-tuning tweaks to your edits. And so that's a lot of the stuff that goes away when you step down to iMovie. But if you're just doing basic cuts, which is really all you need, like avoid the star wipes, avoid a lot of those additional bonus things that come along with your software. If you're just doing basic cuts, which is all you really need, then you're off to the races with iMovie. If you want to get super technical and you want to like put just like, I don't know, 10% stabilization on a clip, and you want to use adjustment layers and you want to go nuts with the post-production, then use the Pro stuff. But yeah, you can get any of
you three are using professional, obviously, software because you're in the business, right?
Yeah.
Many of us YouTubers, we want to use a lot of us want to use what's free, right? Because, or available to us, because we're not professionals to begin with. But like I say, you learn on working on iMovie or whatever the free ones are out there. And
a lot of people have mentioned in the comments there, DaVinci for cutting, and they make great professional software, but there is a free version which is pretty much almost everything that the Pro version has as well. So that's another option if you want something that's a little bit more complicated but still free.
Very cool. Programs like Final Cut Pro 10, is that a very difficult program to learn? Like I'd imagine there's a lot of bells and whistles that most people won't even use.
If you already know iMovie, then you probably can go into Final Cut. It's a very complicated version of iMovie, but I think it's the most intuitive out of all the programs. Like I've edited it in Final Cut Express, Final Cut 7, Premiere, like many different versions of Premiere, Avid, all these DaVinci are edited in all of them, and I find Final Cut's the easiest to just click around and just do what you want to do, because if you're so focused on where's that effect and how do I do this, it takes away from your creative side and creating what you want to create, and it takes a lot of time to do it too and figure it out. So that's why I like Final Cut.
Yeah.
And that's a Mac product, right?
Yeah, unfortunately it's a Mac only thing. So
okay.
The Adobe stuff you can use on Mac or PC.
Yes.
So yeah.
I will say one big advantage to using Final Cut is you don't have to pay for the monthly subscription that you get with Adobe. So like I purchased Final Cut once on day one, 8 or 9 years ago. I haven't paid anything since.
Do you get all the updates as it?
Yeah, so
Okay.
you get updates every single year, and you just pay the one time. But for the longest time, I also used After Effects and cut in Premiere for a little while as well. But like you're kind of tied into that monthly subscription that just goes on forever.
Yeah.
So that's
what
benefit to Final Cut.
What I do like about the Adobe stuff is a lot of people will use Photoshop for the photos. They'll use After Effects for any graphics and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The nice thing, the Adobe stuff all ties together. So if I do something in After Effects, it will automatically appear in my Premiere timeline. And if I need to make a change in After Effects, it's automatically changed. So it has that dynamic link. Well, I don't know about the Apple stuff because what do you use with they have a graphics?
Apple has it's called Motion.
Does that tie in?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, you can make
cool.
effects and it will show up instantly, and then you can.
Nice.
It's the same kind of thing, but it's just a different name.
Yeah. Cool.
Cool. So, how many people out there in the chat actually purchase editing software? If you purchase it, put a 1. If you don't purchase, put a 2. I just want to see a comparison to see who's interested in purchasing versus the freebies, right?
I did notice somebody talking about rendering taking a long time on a slow computer. That's something to keep in mind when you're shooting and editing. Be aware of what your computer can handle. I've generally shoot most of my stuff in HD for YouTube. Sometimes in 4K. I know, Chris, you shoot a lot 4K, right?
Yep.
But you need a computer that can handle it. Obviously, for my show, for Get Outside, that had to be shot in 4K, and the bit rates are huge on that. You're on 128 gigs of storage. I'm getting maybe 30 minutes of footage.
Yeah.
And then when you're editing it, even on my computer's a really powerful machine, I still had to create proxy files so that it would play back smoothly. So
that's
be aware of that.
That's actually another advantage of Final Cut, which is that it has a lot of hardware acceleration built into the software. So I've been able to cut 4K footage on a 5-year-old iMac for about 4 years now. And it's really streamlined, and it's also got Intel's QuickSync technology, which is hardware accelerated rendering. So I can not only skim through 4K footage without transcoding ahead of time, but the export speeds are incredibly fast.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah. YouTube is now starting to offer 4K, are they not?
You can shoot, you can upload 4K. My personal thinking on that, eventually, I mean, some of the things I will shoot 4K and then edit in HD so I have room to move in or zoom in on a shot if I wish. But think about where most people watch YouTube. It's either on a small screen on their computer or on their cell phone. Mm-hmm. So I have clients that insist for doing their podcasts and stuff like that, I'm shooting 4K because people said it's better. I go, yeah, but it's a podcast. Like, why? It's just taking up space on your machine.
Yeah. You definitely have to, like, there's a specific part of the audience that really enjoys it, but I would totally agree, Ben. You're entirely right. Like, the vast majority of people who watch the content never watch it in 4K. But the nice thing about rendering and exporting in 4K is your 1080p tends to look a little bit better.
It does, yes, it does.
Yeah.
And something else that people don't recognize is you can actually upload straight up ProRes to YouTube. So you can upload ProRes 444 straight to YouTube, and YouTube will handle it. It'll crunch it, it'll encode it, and it'll make a super clean copy of your video. And that really starts to depend on how much you want to upload. Like most people will compress their video down to like several hundred megabytes, whereas one of our vlogs that I upload to YouTube, it might be 40 or 50 gigabytes, and that's a little nutty, but it just ensures that I eke out the absolute most quality I can from that upload. But you better be sure you've got unlimited internet.
Yeah. And fast speeds too.
And fast speeds, yeah. We've got fiber optic.
That's good.
which helps. Yeah.
So Martin Pine's asking, do any of the panelists offer workshops for backcountry recording?
Sure, if you want them.
Yeah, we should at some point. Yeah.
Yeah, you never know.
I need some income now that all the events and everything are gone that we're not shooting.
Really. So from the question I asked about purchasing versus free software, it seems like it's a pretty down to 50-50 split there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another area where purchasing higher end software can really help is eking out more quality and production value of your footage in post. So for instance, you can look at your Luma curves in a professional editing suite, and you can pull a little bit more detail out of the shadow, and you can bring down the highlights a little bit and reduce some of the quality. You can't do that with every camera, but some cameras record outside of the normal Luma range. And in the edit, you can actually pull more detail out of the highlights and the shadows in post. And then sometimes you can add noise reduction, and you can effectively pull more detail out of the edit that way as well. So if you really care about detail and top-end quality in your work, you can eke out a little extra quality from your shots in post.
And most of those pro programs, they export in anything basically. Like Final Cut, you can export to anything you ever want. Whereas iMovie will probably only have a few presets, and that's it. So if you're like, for me and Ben too, we have to export for broadcast. They have a very, very specific list of what it has to be, and you need a pro software to export that list. Like I literally have to type in numbers every time I export.
Yeah.
That's cool. Okay. Do we want to get into talking about like video timelines? I know a couple of you had some supporting images there to show what your screen would actually look like when you're editing a video.
Yeah, sure.
Who wants me to pull up? I think I got one from Matt and one from Chris.
Yeah,
mine's there too. They're all there. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's do a comparison. So we'll start with Chris, and you could kind of explain a little bit of it.
Yeah, so in this particular instance, and I should mention there's a primary way to use Final Cut Pro 10, which you're going to see in Matt's example coming up, where all your footage is in the spine of the timeline. So in my spine, you see just a big long gray rectangle, but the Final Cut's really kind of famous for its magnetic timeline. So if you cut a clip in the spine, all the clips to the right of it ripple over or slide over. And that helps a lot of editors condense down their videos really quickly. The second way that you can use Final Cut, and you don't actually find a lot of editors using it this way, but I prefer using it in certain circumstances, is you can actually drop a static null generator in your primary timeline, and then you can stack all your clips on top of it and use that generator as a pincushion, and then you don't have to worry about things moving around, and it actually behaves a little bit more like Adobe Premiere in the sense that you're now stacking blocks and tracks. And I like the way that works because it gives me just like even more control over what's happening in the timeline. Like it makes it easier to loop audio from the previous clip into the second clip. It gives me a lot more control over, holding things in place. But again, it really depends on the job. Sometimes I'll use the primary way, and sometimes I'll use this way. This way really suits if you want to test different things out. So if you want to just move clips around like Lego blocks and try different things and different combinations, it really lends itself to editing in this particular way. Having said that, you lose the functionality of the primary function that made Final Cut so popular, which is the magnetic timeline, but it depends on what you want to do with it. But this edit, this was for Joe Robinette. This edit took about 6 weeks to do. And I would say the primary edit, like the general base edit, like the rough outline, the rough story was probably cut together in about a week. And then after that, it's just pure refinement. And it really depends on how deep into the edit you want to go and how much level of detail you want to add. And yeah, that's where I always tell people that there's a finite amount of time to how long you have to film, but there's almost an infinite amount of time that you can put into an edit if you want. You can just pour endless amounts of time into an edit. So that's why I end up spending lots of weeks putting lots of refinement into the edit afterwards. But if I'm editing for the blog or our channel, typically an edit will be about two weeks per video. And I shouldn't say it's 2 weeks full time. It's usually full week, 2 weeks in like, evenings and weekends and whenever you can squeeze in that time.
Well, everybody seems to be pretty impressed because I'm sure most of the YouTubers in here have a timeline like mine where I got one video going across.
Yeah.
And that's about it, right? Very cool. That's pretty interesting. So, who now? We'll bring up Matt.
Sure.
Let's throw a PC into the middle of this. Let's throw a PC in the middle there.
Ooh, PC.
Okay,
There you go. Have at her, Ben.
All right. It's harder to see because I do, it's a screenshot and I work on actually two screens, a wide screen and a second screen. So this is just a simple, it's actually the video from the other day. See, it's pretty simple timeline. I sort of stack things in order of what they are. So anything that's on track 1 for audio and video for me is generally the narration or me or somebody talking to camera. So I have basically dialogue for the audio on that one. Any other clips that are either just nature, background stuff, that's usually on line 2, along with the sound on audio 2, sometimes audio 3, depending on how much sound I have. And then my music and stuff, I'll put on another audio line. These are our graphics up here and titles, and they'll be up above all the other stuff. And then that's how I keep things generally in order. Sometimes there'll be more, depending on how complicated the edit is, there'll be maybe more layers to it, but this is just a pretty basic edit. I also like to keep my clips open on the second monitor so I can see what I've got, and then I just drag what I need in when I need it. But this is what Premiere, or at least my timeline for Premiere looks like for a basic edit.
Do you three advise separating your audio clips from your video clips? Or does that matter?
Unless you have to.
Yeah, because guarantee what will happen if you separated them, you're going to move one of them. Where the heck did the audio go?
Yeah.
A good trick that I do, if you do have to separate them and you make one longer or whatever, put a marker on each one, and then if they do move, you can see it and you can snap them back to where you originally had it.
Yeah, this is, I know it doesn't, I don't know if it does it in Final Cut. In Adobe, if you do that with a particular clip, it knows that it's still from that clip, and it will tell you how many frames out it is. At least at first when you do it, if you keep it together. If you move it completely out of the way, then it's gone.
Cool. All right, and off to Mark in the Park editor here. Let's see what we got.
Yeah,
and
so
I recognize Mark and Ian there. Yeah.
This is more the, like Chris was saying, this is more the traditional timeline. So I have adjustment layers, and I have like the part that's in the bottom here. It's also called a burn, but you can see the layers of things on top of each other. I don't know if it will do it, but like if I select a bunch of stuff, I don't think it will, but if I delete it, see how everything just moves over automatically?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the way that Final Cut was designed, and it's great for me for broadcast because I need to have the episode at exactly 28 minutes and 30 seconds for Rogers TV Ottawa, and then Barrie, it's a different story, but yeah, so I can just delete a clip, go to the end, and instantly see how long my clip is, as opposed to selecting everything and dragging it over, selecting everything and dragging it over kind of thing. So it makes it easy to cut to a specific length.
Now, Matt, when you say those at the top above that purple line, you say those are like elements that you put. What exactly are those elements that you're putting in there?
This element here, it's called an adjustment layer. I think Chris and I were talking about this before the show. And an adjustment layer, basically, you can put anything on it, and it goes over top of the video. So for me, I have on here hue and saturation, color wheels, and then sharpening. And that just, that's something I want on all the clips underneath it, kind of thing. But the next one up above it is the burn or the bug. It's the Mark in the Park logo that's always in the bottom left-hand corner. That's something that Rogers likes, so I put it in. Yeah, adjustment layers are really nice if you don't want to, like, oh, I put an effect on this one clip. Well, now I want it on all these clips. So you're not doing a copy paste. And if you change one parameter, it changes it for all the clips. So you don't have to re-copy and paste. So it's a great tool, and I think you can. Actually, I learned this method in Avid because I do it a lot in Avid.
Cool. Interesting. Yeah, I'll tell you, it sure looks a lot more complex than what mine look like.
So to tell you that the most important thing to do, I do it almost after every single cut or move or whatever it is. Control S, I guess on a Mac. What's that? Is it Command S?
We don't have to do that.
You don't have. Oh, you don't. It saves automatically.
Yeah. It also makes automatic backups as well. So
well, yeah, Premiere does that as well, but it's at certain times, like every 5 minutes. But I always save after almost. It's become a habit. Sometimes I do it when I'm just typing on the web. You just wait, that's not what it's just become a habit. But you want to save as often as you possibly can.
I will say to relate to that, keyboard shortcuts. If you can learn your keyboard, I've set up my keyboard in a custom way so that I can do things very quickly. I don't have to right-click, scroll down, and then click on that thing. Like most people know copy and paste, but I use my full keyboard to quicken my edit and makes things a lot easier.
Cool. Very interesting. Very interesting.
I'm gonna disappear for a second. I gotta go. Back in a sec.
I will add this. One big advantage for Ben editing Premiere on a PC is that he has a lot of variety in terms of what graphics cards he can choose. And in terms of editing performance, it usually first of all boils down to your graphics card nowadays, and then how fast your processor is. So the really nice thing about editing on a PC is you can really dial that in by just going out and choosing whatever graphics card you can dial things up with. Granted, it works with your motherboard and it's compatible, but that's a downside to editing on Mac is you're kind of tied into using whatever Apple releases. But I will say you get the hardware acceleration in QuickSync for Final Cut, which is really nice. So they both have their pluses and minuses.
One thing I find with Apple is you can open the computer, and within 10 minutes you can be edited.
Yeah.
Whereas a PC, it's more of a project, and a lot of campers are probably into PC because they like to do their own thing and create their own thing. Yeah. So creating their own computer and that kind of thing might interest them, but when I sit down, the computer has to turn on and it has to perform right there and then. I don't want to be dealing with other things. So,
and one nice thing is Final Cut started out really buggy, and it's gotten progressively more stable.
Oh yeah,
it's incredibly stable now. And Adobe Premiere has actually sort of gone the opposite way. It's gone from being a stable program to being more buggy now. I know from talking to a lot of Premiere editors that nowadays, unfortunately, Premiere is crashing quite a bit or hanging on renders and things like that. But Final Cut's become incredibly stable.
Agreed. Yep.
Cool. Very cool. Okay, so I thought maybe now we could get into, and we'll actually combine two together, the special effects and then cuts and transitions. I know some people go crazy with these, like you say, the star wipes, all these types of things. And when we were discussing the other night there, when we were having our little pre-show powwow, I was telling you how I have such a difficult time with doing hard cuts, like, because I always, for my own videos, it always seems that like just like a fade from one to the next always seems to work better for me. But yet I watch Chris's videos and I watch Matt's and everybody else's videos, and they're just doing these hard cuts where boom, next scene, boom, next scene, boom, next scene. And it looks awesome. I can't bring myself to do it.
I was thinking about that a little bit more, Dennis, after you talked about it the other night. And sometimes I think what that arises from, I know that when I encounter that, sometimes it's usually because I don't have enough coverage between shots to get me from one idea to the next. And so that's where editing in the mind while you're filming really pays off in post. If a cut feels hard, it's because you usually just don't have a transition kind of clip to get you from one particular part of the story to the next. So that's where the experience in filming really pays off, and editing before you've sat down at the computer.
And if you ever cut from a scenic shot to yourself and you want to start talking, play around, and when you cut to it, put the voice underneath the clip before it for a little bit, and then cut between words or on verbs or something. Or do it the other way, bring it to you and maybe have a second of nothing, and then you start talking. Just give the viewer, either give them notice, or when it happens, give them a little bit of time to breathe and understand what they're looking at before they hear it.
Yeah. It may also arise because the particular white balance in one clip from the one clip to the other might be drastically different, and then it feels a little bit more abrupt to the viewer. So if that happens sometimes, because particularly when we're filming on the gimbal, sometimes I had to film in auto white balance just because the clip the shot looks drastically different 3 minutes later. The lighting is completely changed, and then when you take opposite ends of that clip and try to put it together, the white balance feels a little different, and that feels kind of abrupt to the viewer. And that's where matching shots in post really helps with that. One really quick tip in Final Cut is it has an auto match feature, so you can scroll over one clip and have it automatically try to balance the color in the next shot. It doesn't always work, but it is a nice way to seamlessly create a transition sometimes.
In general, with editing, there's basic rules, but the ultimate rule is, does it work? If it works for the story you're telling, or the shot or the cut, then use it. It's like a grammar. We understand certain things, and if you look back at old movies compared to now, it was a slightly different grammar. Things change, and things are even changing more because of things like the TikToks and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And some of those things are amazing. I watched some stuff cut by little kids, and I wouldn't even think to do that, but it works. So be open to anything. I mean, if it works for what you're trying to do and what you're trying to say, try anything.
And I love that example about the grammar, because it kind of relates to being an editor going over the same timeline over and over again, in the way that sometimes if you read the same sentence in a paragraph over and over again, it starts to lose its meaning. And that's why an important part of editing yourself is stepping away from the edit for a little while, and then coming back to it so that you see it with slightly fresh eyes. But yeah, in terms of like your grammar analogy, sometimes the edit becomes like this sentence that you just read over and over again, and you need to step away from it.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of confusion in the chat. Many are wondering exactly what is color grading.
Might be able to show that.
So
can I actually show an example? Okay.
Color grading is really just sort of adjusting the colors in post, and it depends. Sometimes you can film in a flat picture profile in your camera, or like a log profile, and then afterwards you might drop like a custom LUT onto it on an adjustment layer, and then it automatically grades your footage to look a specific way. Some people have a workflow dialed in, so they just drag their LUTs onto the footage and it's ready to go. I personally don't use LUTs for vlogs. I just roll with the shots out of camera, and then a grade just with color wheels in post. I find a lot of people are pushing like these LUT packs and these custom color grade packs online, and 9 out of 10 times you don't need them, or if you buy them and you apply them to your footage, they end up making your footage look kind of weird and like just wild colors.
You also have to, if you're going to use LUTs, which are lookup tables, they're a preset color grade. Do your color correction first. Color correction means fixing your white balance, fixing your your exposure, and then you can apply the look. If you apply the look too early, it's gonna mess up. It won't apply evenly to all your shots.
Dennis, if you put my screen up, I can show what the difference is.
Alrighty, I could do that.
So I record in S-Log3 for Mark in the Park Season 2. For 1, I record in S-Log2. So I just wanted to see what the difference is. But here you can see it's kind of like gray and dingy. So if I apply the LUT, I create it myself, you can see that it automatically goes to where it's supposed to be. And this is called a waveform. It shows you the brightness of each part of the video. The reason why we use LUTs is just to capture color. You just see that it just drags it out basically and adds saturation.
Yeah, you get more dynamic range filming in a log profile.
Yeah, that's mainly why I like it, because I like the way that the skin tones look in direct sunlight. But you can see here the guys, like Ian's backlit and Mark is full on sun, and you can see both of them, and there's still color on their cheeks, and so it's a different way to do it. It's a little more complicated. Because there's a lot of, like, I had to create all these different LUTs for different situations. So this is just for Mark in the Park. But it's pretty cool. And then on top of that, you can always, brighten the image itself, and like you can change the colors. This is drastic, but if your white balance is off and that kind of thing. If your image is too dark, you can brighten it up. Or if it's too bright, you can dim it down. That's essentially what color correction and everything is. And Final Cut now has different things where you can. Which one is it?
So when you're doing that, you're doing it to the entire clip, not just a single frame, obviously, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You apply to the entire clip.
And I do go through each clip and see if it's close with the LUT, because the LUT only, it's a guideline kind of thing. It takes the footage and puts it to a place where it can be malleable and it's usable, but you still, maybe you want the blacks to be a little bit higher because they're talking about something in the dark, or here where there's like the sun in the shot, you might want this, like that not as bright or something like that. So I do go through each clip and touch it up a bit, but to have a LUT, it makes it a little bit easier. If you're doing a quick edit, it just applies it to everything, and it's going to look good.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. I don't know if I could even play with that kind of stuff in iMovie.
I don't. Yeah, that's what separates pro from not pro. But
I'd say just to reiterate what I mentioned earlier, like the pro stuff is really just handy for making really fine-tuned adjustments. But if you're starting out, go for that iMovie. Go for the basic editor that you might find on your iPhone. Even like I know people who are cutting videos on iPads nowadays really, really quickly with LumaFusion. And yeah, don't worry too much about whether or not you need to buy something pro. Just just start with basic cuts. Yeah.
A buddy of mine somehow edits his videos on his phone. I don't know how he does it, but yeah.
Well, LumaFusion for iPhone and iPad is actually pretty good, and the processor that's inside the iPhone and the iPad is actually pretty quick.
Yeah, the new iPad Pros are faster than most laptops now, which is pretty crazy.
So from the professionals, what are a couple of like effects or transitions that absolutely nobody should have ever invented?
Starwipe.
You don't like that one, hey, Chris?
What's up?
You don't like that one, huh?
Yeah. The what is really handy for pro applications or is one benefit of using pro applications is all the plugins that come along with them. Having said that, the only plugin that I use a lot is a noise reduction plugin called Neat Video, and it's a very time intensive plugin. It's probably the thing that slows down my computer the most during rendering. But yeah, I wouldn't worry about it too much if I was starting it.
Cool. Okay, let's move on to everybody might want to get their notepads out for this one here. Let's talk about music choices. I know I use this really great resource for getting cool songs, and it's called YouTube Music, right? And it's all royalty free, and everybody uses it because they all have the same music I have. Let's talk about other choices other than what's available on YouTube.
Yeah, so the big three for YouTubers are themusicbed.com, artlist.io, and Epidemic Sound. And they all have subscription plans that allow for monetization for YouTube. So that means you can put your videos up and still make some ad revenue off the pre-roll that's in front. And yeah, you can sometimes use copyrighted third-party music in your videos if you don't plan on monetizing it and you're not promoting things. But yeah, those three that I mentioned are solid choices.
And they're all subscription based?
Yeah. Artlist, I like Artlist. And there's different ones. Some have better music than others. I used to use Audio Blocks, but it wasn't the best music, and they never really added new stuff. Artlist has actually some really good music. So I've been using that mostly. If you're lucky enough for the show, for Get Outside, I actually had a composer create some music for it. So that's nice being able to use original music. So if you know somebody that can make music, or if you make your own music, include some of your own. Why not?
Yeah.
Yeah. I use APM. It's just another library that people use. But to put some APM, yeah. Rogers has a subscription, so I can use it.
Nice.
But to put it in perspective, I was just looking. I have 5,423 tracks of audio downloaded that I liked, and it sounds like a lot, but like one song might have 10 different versions, like without the guitar, without the drums, and so different sites will offer different things. Sometimes I go to a song and like, oh, that's really great, and then 30 seconds in, a random clarinet comes in, and you're like, oh, I don't like that. So you got to move on, kind of thing. But that song might also have a version where the clarinet is not in there. So when I like one song in one album, I'll download the whole album, because usually the albums, they're pretty much all the same flavor of music.
You should also make sure wherever sites you're getting your music from, you check what the license is. Most of them, even if it's a subscription, you're okay for YouTube. I believe Artlist is okay for anything, including commercial use. But you want to make sure of that, and also how many times you can use it. There are some sites that allow you to only use it for one piece. Like you might pay per use, but if you want to use it in multiple videos, you're gonna have to pay for each one. So just be aware of what the license is.
Yeah.
I mean, what's gonna happen is
how does that usually work? You would purchase the use of a song through the subscription,
some of them do,
or you subscribe and you could use any song on the platform.
Some are per song, some are a subscription. Like Artlist is like, what is it, like $200 a year? It's not that much.
Yeah.
And you can use the music forever.
Yeah.
On that. Even once you've downloaded it, I believe you can still use it. Like if I let my subscription lapse next year, the stuff I've already got downloaded, I believe I'm still allowed to use.
Yeah.
So.
And Basecamp Carolina asks, any good free music sites? And we should clarify, and this is probably common among all of us. We all spend a ridiculous amount of time combing through these music libraries trying to find the good stuff. And we invariably end up listening to a lot of bad stuff. And the paid sites really just help cut down some of that time because you generally get what you pay for. So I know that when I go to Artlist or I go to themusicbed.com, I'm probably going to spend maybe an hour looking for a song or two. But if I went to a free site, I might spend all day combing through it, trying to find something that's decent.
Also, so I was going to say also, if you're going through these sites, if you have a subscription someplace, and you're maybe looking for a specific kind of music for what you're working on now, but if you hear something that you like, that you think, oh, that might be good for something else either in the future, or download it so that you know and make note of it, because it'll save you a ton of time.
Yeah, like searching for music is almost like a gambling addiction too, because unlike video where you can just scroll really quickly and you can see the thumbnails, you have to hit play and you have to listen to it, and you never know, the next track might be the one. And so you're just sitting there hours after hours, click play.
That's me going to the YouTube library. So maybe the next one, right?
So
the good thing about doing it for your own videos is once you found a piece you like, you're good. When you do it for clients, that's the most frustrating thing, because often you're editing a video to the music, so that's very important. And then you do it, and then they go, can we change the music? And you're like, oh my God.
Now, I noticed that on the last episode of Mark in the Park there, when you were having your the disconnect moment.
Yes.
And the song was going along. Obviously, you edited to the song because, or it might not have been the disconnect, but each time there was a certain note hit in the song, your scene changed. Bing, next scene. Bing, next scene. Right. Yeah. So you had that thing going. Is that a common practice amongst the professionals to build a video on the music track?
It's a I don't know, it's a choice that you make. It depends on the music, but if you watch big productions, some of them cut to the music and some of them don't. It all depends on if you can do it well one way, do it that one way, but always try the other way to see if you can. But it's usually people's brains work one way or the other. They either like it cut to music or they don't, and they just like to see the images flow one to the other, and the music just kind of is there to fill the space. Kind of thing. So
the music usually has an energy to it that the edit has to follow. You know, if it's quick snappy music but the edit is really slow cuts, it just won't work. So the energy in the edit often matches the energy in the music.
I agree.
And one other quick tip about free sites versus some of the subscription sites is that the free sites often just have one primary track, but if you go to a subscription service like Artlist or MusicBed or Epidemic Sound, they often have multiple tracks. So they'll have an instrumental track and a lyrical version as well, so that you can cut between the two versions. So if there's a lyric you don't like, you can cut that out. Or on Epidemic Sound, you can cut out specific instruments and just use a particular part of the track. And I find that super helpful to essentially remix the song in post. Like a lot of people will ask, how did the piece just fit the music so well? And more often than not, it's because I've cut and remixed the song in the timeline in 24 different places along the music track. And I've effectively rewritten the music track to be completely different than it originally intended to be. And that's super handy because then it just always fits the piece, right? But it's a level of control that you only really get from the subscription sites when you have the option of downloading different parts of the track and different versions of the track.
Question for the Final Cut people. Can you, now there's, so one thing I use a lot with the Adobe stuff in Audition, their audio editing software, you can have it automatically remix a piece of music to a certain length. Yeah. So you might have a song that you've done that you really like that's 2 minutes long, but your clip's like 40 seconds, and you can tell it make it roughly 40 seconds, and it finds the perfect places to do it, so you don't have to manually do it, and it's great. I love it.
I don't know, like that's like, to me that's like putting your camera on auto. I would like to choose what parts of the song I would want where to control the amount of emotion that you feel.
Yeah. Well, if it doesn't get how you like it, obviously you have to do it manually.
Yeah,
a lot of the time it saves a ton of time because it works pretty well. That's
pretty cool though that I can do that and recognize the parts of the song and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Okay, so I'm thinking it's 9:39 right now. We'll carry the show on until 10 o'clock. We'll take we got a couple more little things to touch on really quick, and then we'll get into a few questions. So what I'm going to say to everybody in the chat now, if you have any questions for our panelists, put them into the chat. Put their name before if you have a particular panelist that you want to ask a question of. We'll take questions from throughout the whole show. Just put them in there, and then we'll take as many as we can up until about 9:58 when I'll get into my closing statements. So we'll while that's happening, we'll talk a little bit about video length, how you should determine the length of a video. Any tips on that?
Well, for me, I have to make 3 different versions of a video. So it's kind of, I would love to just do exactly what Chris does and take the best of the best and compress it down. But unfortunately, because I'm editing for cable TV and I have a specific 28 minutes and 30 seconds, I have to be in that slot. It's kind of frustrating how you're like, I gotta put that shot in even though I don't want to because I need that time to be filled. Or I have to cut out story that because the story is longer than the actual spot. So it's difficult, but don't make your video too long where you start to lose viewers. But try to find a great length, and I think Chris does a very good job at that and keeping it short and sweet.
Thank you. Thank you.
So really quick then, Matt. So when we watch your Mark in the Park episodes that are going on right now, is a different cut than what you're actually, if you're watching it on the Rogers Television Network, it's a different cut than what you're, so it's a totally different, same show, but a totally different.
Yeah, so I edit my YouTube first, and then I basically, I put it into the timeline, I copy paste, and then I cut, delete, throw stuff out.
Wow.
Sometimes it, I don't know, a portage, who cares? Get rid of it. Like it's some scenic shots. I put only one disconnect in each episode, so I just trash the other ones. But it is what it is. Like I have a slot to fill, and that's what it is. So it's nice how YouTube is unrestricted. You can do whatever you want. So if the video is 12 minutes and 30 seconds, it's 12 minutes and 30 seconds. So it's good in that way.
And I really, I really feel for you, Matt, because anytime you've got you've got people telling you what you have to do to make your video, like that's just an added level of frustration that really, that's challenging.
Just be happy I don't put commercials in.
Yeah.
It brings new to light, like, when you watch these shows on television, like Survivor or the Alone series and stuff, where they're trying to, all they're hitting is boom, that one particular highlight, right? And it somehow they put that story together that it still clicks. Mm-hmm. You don't know everything that happened all day except for that one highlight, right?
Yeah,
that's what piques the interest.
It's cliffhanger, and it just keeps you watching, keeps you attached to the TV. It's a different style of editing, definitely.
I think for the length of video, I mean, on YouTube it doesn't matter as long as it's interesting. for TV, it's different. Like I was lucky with Get Outside. I was given a range, basically 12 to 15 minutes per episode.
Mhm.
They didn't really care, so I had some flexibility. But YouTube, the way I try and look at a video, when I play my videos back before I put them out, generally, if it's a long video, but there's some videos that you can watch that are maybe half an hour long, but it feels like it's only been 5 or 10 minutes. So that means it's working. So there's some 5-minute videos that feel like you've been sitting there for an hour, which means it's not working. So it's really a matter of the pacing and how it grabs your attention for as far as length goes.
Yeah. I agree.
Quick poll for everybody in the chat tonight. How long of a video are you comfortable watching on YouTube? Are you comfortable watching a 5-minute video, or are you willing to go up to like a full half hour, an hour? I've seen some videos out there 2-3 hours. You know what I mean? I think Jim Baird just put out one there, like a 4-hour compilation.
Yeah.
And something like that I have to watch personally in pieces and parts, right?
Here's a tip: if you're YouTube and if you're monetized,
yeah,
I would split that up.
Yeah, because
it's one, like, yeah, make it into shorter segments. Personally,
he does have the split up one, but
good.
He has to put out a generalized long extended version, right? So the LP, he put out the LP of it. So
I will say though,
okay.
I've sort of noticed over time that on YouTube, like our longer videos actually tend to do better than our shorter videos. And I think that's why you see YouTubers like Joe Robinette putting out long format content like hour-long videos. And I know that in general, if I put out a half-hour long video, it'll actually do better on YouTube than a 20-minute video or a 15-minute video. That's what I've noticed. So I'm now starting to trend towards longer videos, but again, like the filmmaker brain says, no pacing, like you don't need that long shot. But I know that YouTube wants a longer piece of content and wants more watch time, but that's a balancing act.
Also consider if you're making videos, how many videos are you making? If you're putting up content weekly or 2-3 times a week, there's no way you're going to be able to spend, shoot, an hour every week. It's just going to be crazy. So it all depends, I guess, on you. If you're making videos too, how often are you putting them up? What is the purpose of the video, and so on.
That's a really good point. If it's a really basic string out edit, which is what professional editors refer to as just like they're putting all the clips in the timeline. If you're just doing a basic string out edit, you can make a really long video really quickly. Like our 3 hours of content, I can refine that down to an hour-long video in about 4 hours. And if I wanted to, I could hit render and upload that. And I could make videos like that almost every day. But if you're putting a ton of production value into it and you're tweaking just about everything, that's where the time really comes into play, and that's where things really slow down. Taking that video from an hour down to 20 minutes is what takes most of my time. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it really depends on what kind of edit you want to make.
So with that, we'll get into time to edit, like how long it takes to edit a video. Now, I mentioned I'm the master of sitting down for 4, 5, 6 hours and pumping out my video because I want to get it out and I want to get it onto YouTube. You three, on the other hand, are the professionals. Now, Ben said that like he can put them out like that too, and I'm sure all of us can. But in a lot of cases, you guys choose to work on your video, and then, as you said the other night, Chris, you said walk away from it for a while, go back, and then you can see all the things you need to change. It opens up a new fresh pair of eyes almost, right?
Yeah.
So
it's hard because some videos require a lot of attention. Like I have an opening in my videos, and I touch that so many times. I'd be editing an episode, and I'd be like, oh, I don't like that, and I would go back to the opening, even though I wasn't even like editing that, and I would re-edit that. And I've spent countless hours on just the opening, which is a minute long.
Yeah.
But it's just like it's how a perfectionist you want to be, and how much you want to let go, and yeah, there's it's how much effort you want to put into it. Like I've edited an episode of Mark in the Park in 10 hours, I think, once. But in contrast, the next episode took me 50.
Yeah.
And that's working hours. That's not like I don't work 10 hours a day kind of thing. So
Yeah.
it's just like it depends, but
Yeah.
it's a long time sometimes.
To give you an idea, Dennis, of like how deep the edit can go sometimes, like I've spent an entire 8 hours working on 2 seconds of video for a client before, and that's the crazy end of the spectrum. But it really depends on how much and how deep into the edit you want to go. Some clients demand it, others don't, and it's usually just a compromise of time.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's what makes you three the professionals. That's all right. That's great. Okay, so we've got about we can take about 9 minutes worth of questions. We'll try and keep the answers quick and brief, so we can try to get through a bunch of them here within the next few minutes. So regular on the show here, Tina is asking, as a professional, do you ever want a disconnect moment and choose not to film something so you could just enjoy the moment?
No. I'm what I would describe to other people as clinically addicted to filming. So I would film nonstop if I could, but I have to be respectful of Julia's trip and be very conscious of the fact that I don't want to tick her off. So yeah, I would find it really difficult to go on a trip and not film. I would imagine it to somebody who fishes, it would be like going on a camping trip and not taking a fishing pole.
Cool.
Yeah, I sometimes want to not shoot, but if I don't bring a camera, I end up missing it. I'm like, okay, I need to have and I'll have my cell phone anyway, and I'll end up shooting. So
yeah, I just have my little mini disconnects between shots, or while the camera's rolling on a static shot. The camera takes a minute to render a high-speed shot, so in that time I'll just stand there and look around. that's about it.
That's cool.
I'd say the only time I really disconnect is when the camera is set up for like a time lapse.
Yeah, and you could,
yeah.
Here we go. Here's another interesting one. One more try for the slow-mo close-ups of your yum shots there. What are the camera settings you're using?
I shoot at 240 frames a second. The camera has an option to do 120. I don't do that. And broadcast settings is 5994i or 30 frames per second, basically the same thing. You can slow it down even more if you do 24 frames a second. Because it's 240, you can slow it down 10 times. But yeah, I shoot everything at 240 frames a second. And in terms of f-stop, depends on how much light there is. It's usually 4 stops darker, I think, because I'm going from a shutter speed from 60 to 240 or 500. So,
I always thought that was done in the post edit there, but you're actually doing that as a camera. Like,
yeah, so anytime I shoot in the dark and I have the light on, I have to turn the light up all the way. Whereas when I'm shooting at 1.4 for a cooking segment, it's basically at like 25%. So the high speed requires a lot of light, and I'm not even like 240 frames is pretty good, but it's not even as fast as you can go with some cameras. So
excellent. And Algonquin and Beyond has a lot of questions here. Okay, so Chris, this is a question for you. For the night sky shots in your videos, do you think a 17 to 50 millimeter f2.8 lens is good enough to capture similar? What ISO do you usually set?
It really depends on how long the shutter duration is, how long that shutter is open for. So if the shutter is open for 30 seconds, it might work. It also depends on the sensor size as well. So I would be comfortable with using a 2.8 on, say, like a full frame camera at nighttime. But I probably wouldn't use that on a micro four thirds sensor. It just wouldn't be enough light. Yeah. I would, anytime I'm shooting at nighttime or doing time lapses, I try to shoot at f1.8 or even wider.
Cool. Okay, I'm just panning down through. We must have done a pretty good job because there's not as many questions as I thought there was going to be. Let's see here. Yeah, people are piping in still about video lengths. So everybody's all over the board for that as well. Well, that's about it. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to add in the panel to tonight's show?
Go out and
that we may have missed.
Go out and shoot stuff around your neighborhood. You can't really go anywhere right now, but get ready. Like, go out and practice. So when you do go camping, you're ready for it. And try different angles, try different things. Check out some YouTube videos. Watch Chris's channel, watch Ben's channel, watch my channel. Just see what we do in different situations. Create your own way of doing it, and then go out and experiment. Like we're not in the film days anymore. You can shoot an unlimited amount of videos. So just go out and practice and try stuff and come home and edit it. And even if it doesn't go anywhere, just practice.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. And same thing. Learn, make, repeat. You're going to learn so much from just doing. And I would encourage people to look at filmmaking with a creative problem-solving mindset. Because to get your videos to look a particular way is going to require, a lot of problem solving along the way. You're going to have to figure out how to get your particular image or your particular camera to look that way. So getting to that point is just creative problem solving after creative problem solving step to get to it. So be a creative problem solver who is curious and wants to figure it out. If you're not a problem solver, in filmmaking, you're just going to encounter a lot of problems, a lot of issues along the way that you're going to have to solve that might overwhelm you. So come into it with a creative problem solving mindset.
Unfortunately, because a lot of people are campers, they're pretty good problem solvers. So
yeah. With shooting, just try stuff. Like so many times I'll try something and then it may not work, but at least you've tried it. And sometimes you get amazing stuff when you just try different shots, try whatever. And also learn as much of the basics of photography or videography as you can, because the more you know about the basics, whether it's lighting, audio, color, temperature, whatever it is, you're going to be able to handle all the different situations you're going to come across much easier because you're going to know what's happening. So, yeah.
I find if I have to, and I'm no professional by all means, but the one thing I like to do as a YouTuber and a video content creator, I like to get out there, and each time I go out, I try to learn something new, a new way of shooting, a new angle, just anything, even in editing, something new. If you try to learn one thing new with every new video that you produce, you're bettering yourself for the next video. So that's something that I've always maintained with what I do. And sometimes you'll forget things you've done in the past, and go back and watch your old videos, because sometimes you'll learn things from the old stuff that you've done that you may have forgotten.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, guys, you know what? I think this is a successful show. I'm very happy that it went off, and I'd like to thank each and every one of you, Chris, Ben, Matt. You know what? I called on you guys because I admire your video shooting capabilities, and you guys have the clean edits, and you make videos fun to watch. And I appreciate that. I could only hope to strive to be that way one day, and maybe my channel will grow just like your channels are all growing, right? So that's cool. So for anybody in the chat that hasn't checked out these YouTube channels, by all means, check out Chris Prouse's YouTube channel, Two Men in the Canoe, Matthew Haughn, and get caught up on Mark in the Park series. Go back, watch season 1, and then go watch season 2. And you only got one episode left to go for
one episode left. Yeah, it's sad.
It's been a great season, Matt. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
That's awesome. If you haven't already done so, check out their YouTube channels. Make sure you hit their subscribe buttons, hit their bell notifications. You'll know exactly what's coming up. And while you're at it and you're already here, smash my subscribe button down there. It really helps the channel out. I'm still continuing to grow. I'm still learning and trying to bring you guys great content. And I want to try and keep this community nice and tight. If we can't be out on the water as much as we want to be or on the trails, at least we have a nice little gathering spot here. So, Ben, you also have a weekly or twice weekly talk show that you're doing now?
Yeah, well, because we've been stuck inside, I've been doing live chats as well. I chatted with Chris, what was that, 2-3 weeks ago?
Yeah.
And we talked about a whole bunch of stuff. This last week, I did just myself answering questions. Next week, I've got Sean Rowley on, and then Karina's the following week, Alexis Outdoors.
Awesome.
Nice.
Awesome. And what else is coming down the pipe for Matt Haughn?
That's a good question. I'm working on stuff, but obviously because of COVID, our business is a little restricted. So yeah, I'm looking at different stories. Might try to work with different YouTubers who we'll see. But yeah, working on a season 3, that's for sure.
Awesome.
If people are interested.
Yeah. Okay, so with that being said, we're coming up here. It's almost 10 o'clock. I just want to thank everybody in the chat for watching tonight. Like I say, I hope you got something out of this. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay on the bright side of the moon here. And you know what? We'll see you all next time. Hopefully, I haven't announced Tuesday's show yet because I'm still working on that. So this Tuesday may end up being a surprise. So stay tuned. Watch my Facebook page for that, and you'll know exactly what's going on. In the meantime, good night. Thanks again, everybody, and sweet dreams.
Night.
Bye-bye.
See ya. Thank you.